Shadows Literary License Podcast episodes. Ben Stokes here, exploring all things Collinsport, Maine, and following the likes of the Collins family, and the friends and foes, with your co-hosts, Tom Diamond, Jesse Fultz, Vicky Ray, and Keith Chalgo, Collins family, story about blood relations, literally.
Hello, welcome to Literary License Podcast, and today we're doing Dark Shadows, episodes 375 to 395. And before we get started, let's find out who's with us today. Today we have Tom Diamond. Hello, Tom.
Hey, everybody. Hi, Keith. Hope everybody is well today.
And Vicky Ray.
Hello, everybody.
And the dapper Jesse Fultz. Hello, Jesse.
Hi, folks.
And he is looking rather dapper, let me tell you ladies out there.
He cut off his beard. He looks like a movie star.
Wow.
I was telling him to go to California and start looking for work.
And all I can say
everybody.
Is down, boy, down.
And myself, Keith Chalgo. And before we get started, let's find out what everyone's been up to since last time we spoke to them. So, Jesse, what have you been up to since last time we talked to you?
Well, I got a haircut.
Clearly.
As everyone can see. Yeah. And I've been working some more on my projects, getting some work. Yeah, all kinds of fun stuff.
And what about yourself, Vix?
Oh, getting Asher ready for state championships in 4 weeks. And I've been watching my typically highly vibrational, uplifting horror flicks. I watched this. Oh gosh, it's eluded me now. It was on Netflix last night. It was one of those South Korean zombie flicks, and it was about, I can't remember the name of it, but these people were in an apartment complex and they were overrun by zombies.
Hashtag I'm alive.
Yes, alive. That hashtag alive. Oh my God, I love South Korean zombie flicks. Those people got it going on. That was absolutely fantastic. And it does, like I said, every time I watch something like that comes out of South Korea, you don't even need the subtitles because it has so much freaking action all the time that you know what's going on. And I just happened to come across that little gem last night, and I just have to give a shout out to that hashtag alive. That was really quite good. And the ending was, I wasn't expecting that. It was pretty cool. But other than that, I finished Ratchet on Netflix. And
Love to watch that.
Got to catch up on
Very
The
good.
Boys on Amazon for our weekly installment. But other than that, just living the dream, guys.
Yeah.
And what about yourself, Tom? What have you been up to?
Well, pretty busy. Watching Ratchet, which just started on.
You liking it?
I do like it. It's a combination of Twin Peaks and Psycho. From what I see,
It's very dark.
Yeah,
And it's beautifully filmed. It looks beautiful. It's really
Yes, they
beautiful.
did. I love how the makeup and just the clothes she puts. So they got her outfits are fantastic.
The colors I've seen from the trailer are pretty epic, but I haven't seen the show yet.
Yeah,
Oh, God, I love that.
a lot of
some people aren't
primary
happy with
colors.
that,
It reminds me of when they did the Dick Tracy movie 20, 30 years ago, and they used those red, blue, and green colors.
Primary colors.
Yeah, the primary colors.
Sort of like the Joker.
Yeah, well, but so they repeat that there. But I mean, there are some slow parts, and you do have to sit through that. But I think it's. I mean, I haven't watched the whole season yet, but I think it's engaging, and it's also it also cuts into the into the doctor that's trying to look for his. For his own light in the sun, and the idea of the lobotomy, which is
that was just eyeballs in general. I could not unsee lobotomy. I just can't. It's just like, now that I know how to do it, though.
The ice pick. And they did that with the ice pick.
They did.
Keith didn't speak to that. They did that with the goddamn ice pick. Yeah.
Good old days.
I mean,
we go back to those.
I know people that could benefit from a lobotomy.
Almost.
I could benefit from them having a lobotomy.
90% of the population could use it. No.
Let's go for those frontal lobes, everybody. But so there's that. Also, I'm starting to watch Boardwalk Empire, which I thought was, I mean, that's 10 years old already, but I thought that was fascinating. Oh, from the 20s, and it was such meticulous detail. And Martin Scorsese, I think, was involved in it, and in terms of that, and also Tim Van Patten, who's, I think it's his father, was on 8 is Enough.
Oh, Dick.
Dick Van Patten, and Dick Van Patten was also in, I remember Mama when he was a kid in the radio. Or was it the old TV show? I think it was the old TV show. But Boardwalk Empire is absolutely, it's got a lot of sex for those people who are, and I'm, but it's also got a story, and it's well written, and it's based on true stuff, the Capone stuff, the Prohibition. So I mean, it's and is it horror? Yeah, because it actually happened. So I think it's a good bet. I will say one more thing, and I just want to say something about, I mean, we've all been through higher ed. Keith is very distinguished, or extinguished as the case may be, with his 2 doctorates.
Don't blow his head up.
And Vicky, it already is, and Vicky, the archaeologist, who should dig up some of my professors, and
dig up some of mine.
Please, yeah, and then throw them back. The bad ones, and Jesse, and of course, in your backgrounds. And I'm going for my doctorate thing is fine right now, but I wanted to get into a master's program at the University of Southern Mississippi, and I will only say to you, and I don't want to say that they're alone in this. I'm sure there are other colleges like this, but to everybody who wants to go for an advanced degree, anybody who loves education as a primary thing, because whether it's on the side or whether it's, just caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. There are some good ones out there. There are some bad ones out there. And I think as far as this one was concerned, the good thing I can say about them is that their back office and their ethics, their compliance ethics department are excellent. And I mean, really in terms of trying to help me out with the problem I had. But the problem I had was, number one, getting billed for 9 credits instead of 3, which I had to figure out myself. Then there was an academic requirement that they should have talked about, and they admitted to me that they should have talked about it before admittance, and they didn't, and they spring it on you after you get admitted. And I had already completed this academic requirement at my primary institution. They didn't want to know from me. You got to take it over again, because it was a graduate school wide requirement. And then I got the ivory tower treatment from the department advisor, and to a lesser extent from the program coordinator, which was really, really extremely insulting. Now, I think that in general, academia has their issues now, especially with COVID. They've got to lay off those poor adjuncts. They've got to lay off tenured professors. The students, on the other hand, they're going to parties, and that's not helping situations. But but that's another story. But the bottom line is that colleges are. It's a seller's market now. It is no longer a buyer's market, and this is IMHL, my humble opinion, but I am fervently saying to all the students out there and all the families of the students, stand up for yourself when it comes to universities. Let them know that you are not just a student there; you're a customer if you're paying for it, and if you're paying for it. There's something in business called competitive advantage. You pay for something, you get what you pay for. That's plain English. So that's my 2 cents on it. And my primary university is great. Yeah, everybody has little glitches and stuff like that, but they're a model. They're online. But for everybody out there that wants a good education, it's still out there. But don't be abused, don't be bullied, and don't be taken advantage of. That's my 2 cents. Thank you, Keith.
And myself, what have I been up to? I watched Nurse Ratched. I binge watched that. Been watching Misfits from English programming. That's quite enjoying that. And tomorrow I'm doing a horror convention in London Arena. So if you're in London, make sure you go to that because I'm giving an hour-and-a-half talk about psychosis and horror films. And I'm doing that. I think that's going to be, they might air that as a TED Talk, which will come out in about 4 months' time.
Psychosis and horror films. Do you have a particular affinity for that?
No, well, I'm a criminal psychiatrist, a forensic psychiatrist, so maybe, I don't know. They got me talking about it, which is good. It pays. I'm a whore.
Oh, those are paid.
Yep, and then afterward, I'll be doing a social distancing autograph session. So, so if you're into that, come to London Arena this Saturday. I'll be there from 9 o'clock until 7 o'clock. And then I'm flying out to Gibraltar at 5 o'clock in the morning on Sunday and doing a horror convention there at the British Navy base. So I'll be there, and I'm there from 9 to 4, and then I fly back to England and go back to work on Monday. So that's what I'm doing this weekend.
To the States for any conventions here, if they have?
No, there's no conventions going on in the States at the moment. They've all... I don't know how they're doing the social. I mean, Gibraltar's kind of weird. I mean, that's going to be interesting because there's no social distancing or anything going on there.
Spain is closed technically.
What?
That isn't affiliated with Spain. Gibraltar.
No, it belongs to England. Which that's the sore point between England and Spain. So, but so I mean, if no one shows up, if I'm not there, and because no one showed up and I decided to take 5 minutes off, I'll be up with the monkeys. Yay! So, but besides that, that's
you better
what I'm
call me.
To.
Is that Pete
from Gibraltar?
Yes.
What's
that?
I could be like Cher and do. If I could turn back time, I wanted to stay on one of the ships.
Well, I thought it was Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves with you and Cher. Yeah.
Okay. If I could turn back time,
with all them sailors on the USS, whatever it was.
Hey, let's mention IMDb. I mean, I think it's fantastic that that we got on IMDb recently, and we're all doing very well there. And as far as I'm concerned, I want to thank whoever is clicking on my behalf. I'm personally honored, and everybody else is doing pretty well. I think Jesse's doing better than me, actually. Do you know that, Jesse? Did you know that, Jesse? I think you're doing better than me. And
I've been posting your nudes on IMDb, so just to help our ratings go up.
You need to just give them to me because I can increase my whatever on Facebook a lot because of all of us crazy old ladies on social media. Pass them over, Jess.
Every little bit helps.
Take one for the team, Jess.
I'll start an OnlyFans account now.
Put your picture on there. Now you can put your
We
picture
can put them on our Patreon page.
We'll be starting to write you, Jesse.
Oh, Lord.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to cut to Story Geek, who's going to tell you what you can watch, what you can download, and what you can stream during the COVID crisis. Take it away, Story Geek.
What movies and TV shows should you be watching the week of September 21st this week? Well, let's get into it. I'm Jay Shear, the executive producer of the Story Geeks podcast, and here are all the movies and TV shows available that are in wide release or of general interest to you. You're probably sick and tired of hearing me say that there's nothing new in wide release in theaters or available for rent, but that remains true this week as well. I did get to see Tenet in the theater, and I'll say this, if you enjoyed Inception, I think you'll also enjoy Tenet. Inception, in my mind, is still a slightly better film, but Tenet is also really good for a wild ride. As the movie description says, it's not about time travel, it's about time inversion. And just know going in, you're probably going to need to watch a YouTube video after you see the movie just to understand what's going on. But don't worry, there's some really good YouTube videos out there to kind of explain it. I do recommend it, especially, like I said, if you enjoyed Inception, then it's probably something you'll enjoy too. Metacritic gives it a 69, and it's rated PG-13. Not much new on Netflix. I've been going back to watch *Halt and Catch Fire*, which is essentially a TV show about the development of the personal computer. It has a lot of critical acclaim, but I will say, based on my reviews, it's just okay. It's a drama. It's very much like Mad Men. If you like Mad Men, you may really enjoy *Halt and Catch Fire* as well. There is lots of new content, though, on Amazon Prime. So let's get into it. There's *Color of Money*, *The Hand That Rocks the Cradle*, *The Life Aquatic* with Steve Zissou, *Lincoln*, *Oh Brother, Where Art Thou*, and *The Royal Tenenbaums*. So if you're a Wes Anderson fan, you've got 2 movies on that list that you can go watch on Amazon Prime. If you don't know who Wes Anderson is, then you may not like Wes Anderson movies. Just know that he's a very specific kind of auteur filmmaker. But if you like Wes Anderson, that's good. Two films just for you. Over on Disney Plus, they've added Bend It Like Beckham and the TV series Once Upon a Time, which I know my wife is a huge fan of, so I might go back and watch that again with her. And I don't remember mentioning this earlier, but they did add the Wolverine earlier this month as well. So if you're into the X-Men, go watch the Wolverine on Disney Plus. Over on Hulu, you will find Baby Teeth and The Fight. I don't have Hulu, so I don't have a lot of information about these films, but if you have seen them and you recommend them, please let us know. If there's anybody listening who wants to self-publish a book, I just released an educational course titled Marketing 101 for Self-Published Authors. I wrote and published an Amazon top-selling time travel novel, and I have over 20 years of experience with my background in marketing. So I basically paid for a marketing degree and an MBA and spent a bunch of time doing marketing so that you don't have to. So this is my e-learning course for people who want to self-publish their own books, Marketing 101 for self-published authors. And if you want more information on that, you can go to jayshear.com. JAYSHERER.com. Until next week, this has been Jay Shear from the Story Geeks Podcast, and I hope you have fun watching movies and TV shows wherever you can find them these days.
Hello, welcome back to Literary License Podcast, and thank you, Story Geek, for those helpful and wonderful hints, and we'll be checking those out ourselves. So now we get to our Shedding the Light, where Tom was going to give us what the bloopers from episodes 375 to 395 are.
Hi, everybody. Tom Diamond here from the Literary License Podcast, and I am here today to talk about episodes 375 to 395 in this block. And we've got some very interesting information here. Let's cut right to the chase. Let's talk about the stars. And the first one I want to mention is the cat. The cat is Tuxedo. And it was Joshua Collins was transformed into a cat by Angelique, and that was a very great few episodes for the poor thing. I have no idea whether it was male or female. There's no name for the cat. If any fan has that, let us know. The cat first appeared in 378. And moving right along to human actors, Anthony George continues as Jeremiah Collins in episodes 377, 378, 383, and 384. Thayer David continues as Ben Stokes in episodes 378 for a number of episodes. Now, Paul Kirk Giles plays Reverend Altenbrook, and he's the guy that marries Barnabas, or tries to marry Barnabas and Josette, but Josette elopes with Jeremiah. And Paul Kirk Giles was born in 1895 and died in New York City, 4/23/1976. Paul Kirk Giles was famous for Pulitzer Surprise Playhouse in the 1950s, and Young Man Fancy in 1952, and Ford Theater, a lot of old TV stuff. David Ford continues as Andre Dupre, 380, 383, 384, 387, and finally into 394, and that's the last episode that you were going to see David Ford in this character. He was getting a divorce from Nancy Barrett and had to take an extended leave from the show due to that. And he will return 5 months later when the cast returns to 1968 as Sam Evans. So look for him then. David Cryer. David Cryer played the false image of Jeremiah, and that's the one where even Barnabas realizes it isn't his voice. David Cryer is famous for Escape from Alcatraz. 1979. American Gigolo, 1980. Our Town, 1987. And he's still alive, I believe. And he was born in 1936, so he's up there in years. Dan Morgan is Riggs, the butler in in episode 383. Born in December of 2006, died in March 4th, 1975 in Flushing, Queens in New York. Is famous for Lux Video Theater from 1950, Route 66, Pretty Poison, The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight, The Lucy Desi Comedy Hour, and Naked City. This block is notable for the first appearance of Jerry Lacey as Reverend Trask in episode 385. Moving on through 386, 387, 388. He is also mentioned in episode 383 by Abigail, as she's getting him in from Salem. Jerry Lacey will go on, of course, to play various generations of Trasks almost throughout the show, and he will be reprising his role of Tony Peterson when we get back to the present. So be looking forward to that. Sharon Smythe returns briefly as Sarah in 389, since Angelique decides to stick the voodoo doll in her. And that was shot, by the way. That was a nice Christmas present while everybody during that year was looking at Santa Claus and visions of sugar plums dancing over their heads and looking forward to a festive Christmas turkey. On Dark Shadows, they had Angelique sticking pins and making a 9-year-old kid sick. Okay, Timothy Gordon, the ghost of Jeremiah. Timothy Gordon, of course, was known as the hand that you saw when Barnabas was first lifted out of the coffin. He played other bit parts. And in episode 390 to 391, and also into 393, he was the ghost of Jeremiah with the head bandages. And Timothy Gordon, interestingly enough, I came across a story that he had an active fan club, and he was very, very nice to the fans, and he kept writing letters to them. He said he loved the show, and he wanted them to have him on more often, and he wanted the fans to support him there, which is interesting. Addison Powell is the voiceover of Jeremiah. So while Timothy Gordon is the physical ghost of Jeremiah, Addison Powell is the voiceover. And that was the first appearance of Addison Powell in Dark Shadows. He goes on to portray a judge in one episode of the block of another block coming up in this arc, and he was also going to play a pivotal character once they get back to once they get back to the present. So I don't want to give away too much, but look for him there, and the fans know who he is. Addison Powell was in 3 Days of the Condor, and he was MacArthur in 1977, had a great resemblance to him, the Thomas Crown Affair, Mating Game. Addison Powell was born in 1921, and he died November 8th of 2010. Okay, and so now we get into the bloopers. There are a few of them, so bear with me. We overlapped, and in 376 and 377, which we talked about last time, actually, we spoke of Dory Kavanaugh, who played Phyllis Wicks on the show. Dory Kavanaugh was in Hester Street later on, and Dory Kavanaugh in 376 plays Josette in the dream sequence that Naomi had. And in 376 also, we talked about the fact that she was supposed to give, she had a false hand that Jeremiah took while he was pulling her away, and it was a mannequin's hand, and that we see the blooper where the stagehand hands the hand to Dory Kavanaugh. In 377, Amazon Prime notes the devil's mark is in the left hand of Dory Kavanaugh during the dream, and the right hand, that devil's mark appears in the right hand of Catherine Leigh Scott as Josette later on. Also in 377, Sarah Collins refers to Millicent as Mrs. Collins. In 377, as Lara Parker pours rose water, it clacks against the ceramic white pitcher. In 378, we have a number of bloopers, mainly attributed to Louis Edmonds, who must have been having a tough day. He refers to a vulgar expression that Ben used during an argument. He walks in on an argument between Angelique and Ben, and Angelique tells Ben to shut his mouth. And I don't know if that wasn't the expression Ben used, and I didn't hear any vulgar expressions that Ben used. And then Louis Edmonds asks what he said is Joshua. Ben says, I. And then he says, tell me the truth. He mixes up, he mumbles the word familiarity, and he says it's familiarity. I'm still trying to get that tongue twister right. Familiarity with an L. Put in an L in that word, and then you got what he said. Closed caption bloopers. You should always watch out for these if you look at the closed caption. In this case, Joshua, Louis Edmonds was absolutely right. He says thoroughly warned, and the closed captioning says fairly warned. And this is also the episode where Joshua turns into the cat. Joshua's talking to Jeremiah. And then you see really a stop action. Jeremiah is looking out the window, and you can see the scene is edited out, whatever happened. And they were getting the cat into position, apparently. And then it resumes. Jeremiah is looking out the window, and then he looks back, and there you see the cat. Now, in 379, Grayson Hall, it's kind of a famous one. She was drinking wine while she was talking to Vicky and reading tarot cards, and apparently Grayson Hall's wine went down the wrong pipe. So she started to cough during the entire scene. She was trying to hold it back intermittently, but you could hear her talk. Well, you could hear her cough, I should say, while Vicky was talking. And then at some points, you could actually see tears coming out of her eyes. She was wiping them away as they were talking. The Amazon Prime mentions that she continued to cough backstage. I didn't catch that, however. And also in this episode, you can see the cat handler's head in the bottom of the screen while he's trying to manipulate the cat. Now, the next thing I need to talk about is the adventure of the moving mole, as I call it. You're going to see it initially. Natalie has a mole on the lower left corner of her, it's the lower right corner if you're looking from our point of view of her chin, but I think it's the lower left corner if you were looking from her point of view. Anyway, it's the lower left corner of the chin in episode 382, and then mysteriously in later episodes it moves to the right side of her cheek, and then in later episodes it disappears altogether. Catherine Leigh Scott, on the other hand, who never had a mole during most of the Josette sequence, all of a sudden pops up with a mole on her left cheek. Now, also in 379, this is a cute one. The cat jumps off the divan while Natalie and Abigail are talking, and Alexandra Mulkey as Vicky is in the background. Alexandra Mulkey is looking at the cat as it jumps off, and she starts to laugh, and she starts to smile, and she covers her face in order to hide the smile. It's really a good one. In 381, there's a figure in the old house. The figure on the staircase starts to go downstairs as two characters are talking, and then goes right back up quickly. In 382, the cat turns back into Joshua, and from this, there's this smoke effect and this big loud bang, and you can see that the cat is visibly scared from the smoke effect and jumps off the bed, which is really cool. In episode 385, now don't get me wrong, Jerry Lacey is brilliant as Trask. By the judge of the quick and the dead. I'm not going to get into my impression of him, but he's looking at the teleprompter a couple of times, and it's notable while he's questioning Vicky, and then he looks at the teleprompter because I think at some point he's standing with her and he's supposed to push her into her chair, and I think he's looking into the teleprompter to see whether this is the right time to push her into the chair, and there's a notable pause while he's doing that. We have a great example of Fritz speak, as I call it, where Jonathan bumps a line in episode 386. I'm judging that this girl is innocent until she is proven innocent. Instead of saying, I'm judging that she's innocent until she's proven guilty. And by the way, 388 is when you see Catherine Leigh Scott's mole on the right cheek. 390 to 391, and that's the Christmas episode. That's where Jeremiah is also shot in the chest. Very nice Christmas present as well. So he's shot in the chest, but his head is bandaged throughout all the rest of it until he dies and when he comes back as a ghost. So what happened to the chest wound? Okay, and in 392, the famous misspelling of Jeremiah on his tombstone. Jeremiah's name is Jeremiah, and here's for the OCD fans, on the tombstone it's spelled as Jeri. So there's an E to I substitution. In episode 393, we have a crew member moving from the right to the left across the bottom of the screen while Roger and Natalie are talking. We have Jeremiah in episode 395, Jeremiah visible in the dark before the lighting makes him appear. And finally, going back to episode 393, we have Timothy Gordon moving into position. We see him actually moving into position as the ghost as Andre and Natalie are talking, and I think that's in the Collinwood Hall. The new Collinwood Hall. So, everybody, that's it for this block. And now, and I hope you enjoyed this one, and now let's get back to the show.
I'm Vicky Ray.
And I'm Jesse Fultz, and this is the Collinsport News.
Angelique, in her dire need for attention, concocts a magic potion to make Jeremiah love Josette, which works like a charm. Jeremiah runs to Josette and, like plucking petals off a daisy, I love you, I don't love you, I love you, I don't love you. He lands in Obsession and Island, and he will not leave anytime soon.
Natalie averts her eyes from her tarot cards and notices that Josette is meeting Jeremiah, which raises more than her eyebrows. Natalie cannot believe that Josette would fall in love with Jeremiah over Barnabas, whilst the rest of the world is thinking, Jeremiah or Barnabas, whom would I want to lose my virginity to? Anywho, Natalie puts this down to witchcraft instead of pheromones and hormones.
Meanwhile, Barnabas is still planning his wedding with Josette, although she has been avoiding him at dinners, picking out furniture, and finding excuses to stay in her room. When they do finally meet, she flops back to Barnabas, sharing a very uncomfortable kiss before Josette runs back to her room in her anxiety fugue.
Naomi enters a dream world where we see that two people have Satan's pitchfork on their hands. Naomi is scared because she believes that this means that there's a curse on their nearly betrothed. Apparently, Barnabas and Jeremiah look the same from behind. Who have thought?
The next morning, the mark of the devil, or the cartoon pitchfork from Satan, appears on the hands of Jeremiah and Josette. Josette notices and gives a cry before running back to her room where she meets Angelique. We learn that rose water can get rid of magic markers. The devil's tattoo, which disappears for a little bit of time on Josette's hand. Jeremiah takes this as a sign that it is a time for him to leave. And now he has a tattoo. It is the sailor's life for him.
Angelique realizes that this Jeremiah's leaving will thwart her plans to get Barnabas for herself. She hatches a plan on how to make sure she gets what she wants and keeps Jeremiah in Collinsport. Excuse me, just 1 minute. Does Barnabas have a trick pelvis, or does he have some secret technique that we are not privy to? Why is Angelique so hot and bothered for Barnabas?
Going back on topic, Angelique decides that the only way to keep Jeremiah in Collinsport is to put a curse on Joshua. Meanwhile, Joshua and Jeremiah are having a conversation after a horrible cat yell or howl, or whatever that sound is supposed to be. Jeremiah turns around and there is a black and white cat where Joshua used to be. Joshua is now a cat thanks to Jeremiah. Very cute cat that we are now going to learn that the people of Collingswood are not very good with cat breeds or coloring.
Because Jeremiah has disappeared, Natalie believes that this is because Victoria is a witch and tries to persuade Barnabas to marry Josette right away. It seems that the illicit affair between Barnabas and Angelique was very hush-hush because no one seems to know that anything happened between this pair. Barnabas takes this under this advisement and moves the wedding to the next day.
Angelique, always one step ahead of everyone, casts another spell, making Josette disappear as she starts making plans to her wedding. People decide to go on the hunt of Josette and search high and low. Whilst Barnabas is on journeys, the mysterious stranger tells Barnabas that she has left him for Jeremiah, which causes Barnabas' nostrils to flare.
Abigail Collins goes snooping around in Victoria's bedroom and discovers her charm bracelet, which she believes makes Victoria a witch. Forming her own coven with Natalie, they are on a road of Victoria is a witch. Everyone starts commenting on the black cat running around the house. Excuse me, people. It is not a black cat, but a black and white cat. Christ almighty, what color spectrum are these people living in? Even when it was filmed in black and white, the cat still would not have been black.
Simmer down there. While Abigail is in Victoria's room, a yell or a howl or whatever that sound is supposed to be occurs, and boom, Joshua is now human again. Abigail is shocked and dismayed, but this only adds fuel to the fire of Victoria being a witch. We should also note that Natalie and Abigail find Victoria's beige ensemble from the 60s, which are down-to-her-knees skirt, cardigan, and blouse, and polyester blends are considered the devil's clothing. Thank God it wasn't Carolyn in her miniskirt ensemble.
True. I know. Jeremiah and Josette are in an inn's bedroom, who have run off and have eloped before they can consummate their relationship. Josette comes up with the great idea of going back to Collinwood and face the music. Jeremiah agrees with this, and we know that this is heading to crap very soon.
Jeremiah and Josette come back to Collinswood and announce that they are married. Barnabas throws a hissy fit and slaps Jeremiah and challenges him to a duel. Everyone is flabbergasted, and Barnabas comes across as a millennial who hasn't got what he's wished for. Everyone tries to tell Barnabas that he is close to his uncle, and this should not happen, only making Barnabas stomp off in a tantrum.
Josette pleads with Barnabas to cancel the duel, but Barnabas seems unaware that he despises her, even though Barnabas has done the same thing to Angelique. It seems Barnabas is not aware of his own inner being and only judges others. Maybe Barnabas is not the kind and gracious person we are led to believe. The duel happens and Jeremiah is mortally wounded, causing Josette to expose her love and doing her best Maria from the West Side Story impression. Tells Barnabas that she never loved him.
During all of this, Abigail has summoned Reverend Trask, a heretic looking for witches in Collingswood. He interrogates Victoria, asking her questions that have no right answers, and decides that tying her to a tree all night will prove her of her demonic power. She is then set free by Nathan Forbes, who thinks this whole deal is a bit stupid, but Angelique explodes the tree to make it look like Victoria did this through her powerful witchiness.
Trask goes to the tree with Barnabas and notices that the tree is all asunder and uses this to prove Victoria's a witch. Barnabas and Nathan are helping Victoria by hiding her in Collinwood. Nathan steals food for Victoria from the old house, but gets caught by Angelique. Nathan flirts with Angelique to get her out of the way, but Angelique doesn't fall for it and lets Trask know where to find Victoria.
Trask and Joshua go to Collinswood to find Victoria, but she is now gone and leaves her food scraps behind, which apparently weren't the brightest idea. Nathan tries to hide the fact that Victoria was there, but this doesn't fool anyone.
Angelique, never being one to sit on her laurels, makes Sarah ill. It seems that this illness may be fatal, but Angelique says that she can make tea from weeds in the forest to cure her only if Barnabas agrees to marry her. Barnabas agrees, and Angelique makes the steady brew which cures Sarah in 5 minutes. Still, no one suspects Angelique of being a witch. This woman could be riding a broom throughout the house, and the family would still be clueless.
Meanwhile, Josette spends her time looking after the mortally wounded Jeremiah. Either through overtiredness or delirium, you can decide on this one, Jeremiah appears to her bloodied and wrapped in bandages and fares a warning to her. Jeremiah dies, and in due haste he is in the ground. No funeral, no final farewells, and no tears. Dead, buried, and forgotten, except by Josette, who goes to the graveyard to mourn his death. Jeremiah does a carry, and his hand comes out of the ground, freaking poor Josette out.
A despair, Josette, having lost her bow, thinks she can jump on the Barnabas bandwagon soon. Finds out that Angelique is to marry Barnabas. Josette is shocked and hurt, but hides it well and tries to be supportive whilst other members of the family are not so delicate on their views. Naomi tries to be supportive, though she can't seem to understand what the hurry is. Joshua forbids this and tells them that they must leave the premises, and Abigail, she thinks that this is trickery, though this may also have to do with Trask questioning Angelique earlier to see if she was a witch, which was interrupted by Joshua.
Joshua disinherits Barnabas, but Naomi decides to give the old house to Barnabas as a present, so that way he can stay on the grounds, and tells him that his father will eventually come around. Barnabas, meanwhile, is not having a good day, as Angelique decides to put the fear of God into him and gets Jeremiah's ghost to pay a visit to Barnabas. And I am Vicky Ray.
And I'm Jesse Fultz, and this is your Collinsport News for December 1967. Have a good night, and don't let the vampires bite.
Hello, welcome back to Literary License Podcast, and we're discussing Dark Shadows, episodes 375 to 395. You just heard a synopsis from Vicky and Jesse. So, Vicky, what are your thoughts of these episodes?
Well, I found it kind of interesting how everything's starting to run its course again. You got Angelique, who's, I don't know if you know, if it's a dire need for attention, but she's got the magic potion, and she's getting, make sure that Josette and Jeremiah are totally into each other. And then they got the little tattoos on their wrists. What are they? Pitchforks? Is that what they are? Pitchforks. Yeah, the sign of the devil.
It's a pitchfork.
So, you know, and so you know that shit is immediately going to start running downhill, and this is what brings about all these. This is the incidents that brings about what happens in the so-called present times of Dark Shadows. How it all evolves, you know, because the witch is going to curse everybody, and everybody is going to, you know, suffer some kind of horrendous fate at this point, because what is it? She's like a woman scorned at this point. Mm-hmm. You almost got to feel bad for Josette. Why is she this pissed off? I mean, did Barnabas lead her on? Or, you know, I mean, they don't really go into it except like there might have been a couple of interludes. And
yeah, but that's why you have to read Lara Parker's book.
Well, I mean, Josette and Barnabas's marriage is to make the family money stronger. That's what that whole marriage is about. Mm-hmm. Now, as far as Barnabas loving Josette, I think it's quite telling that when Josette goes running off with Jeremiah, and they get married and comes back, and what you kind of get is it's all about Barnabas's pride. It's not about that, oh, I've lost the girl I love. It's about I've lost my pride, and that's the reason why they had the duel.
Well, he was mad though too. I mean, it was almost like, well, they were fighting over possession of this one woman, basically. Jeremiah, because he couldn't help it, and well, yeah, I guess it was Barnabas's pride. But, you know, Josette, she just couldn't. I guess, you know, there's no willpower there. I guess you can't overcome
I mean, I don't know if this is Jonathan Fritz's acting, but the thing is, there seems to be a lot of lack. We did kind of picked up on this in the last episode, but there seems to be a lot of lack of sparks between Josette and Barnabas. Right. But there are sparks between Angelique and Barnabas. There's a lot of sparks between these two people.
Would you call it sexual tension at this point? Because there's a thin line between love and hate.
But there's a lot also that has to do with Lara Parker's acting that I think ignites that.
Very passionate.
Yeah, extremely so.
And you just get these sparks. And I don't know if I think I missed this out before, but rewatching this, of course, you know, as our listeners know, that when you start watching stuff and we discuss it, you tend to start watching things differently than what you normally would.
True.
Especially for the podcast. And you just pick up these nice little subtle hints and stuff like this. And to be honest, I don't know. Maybe it's because you have this buildup of what Josette is. I mean, we've had 350 episodes of what Josette is, and the mystique of Josette, and the ghost of Josette, and Josette is this, and this, and this. And then we get into this storyline that we actually meet Josette, and she's kind of a wet, weaselly kind of a character. I was quite shocked.
She's kind of a wet blanket, but she's a damsel in distress. But you got in comparison, you got Angelique. Who's, I mean, I'm trying to figure out how illicit was their affair when, they were.
I would sit there and say that sex ensued between Barnabas and Angelique.
Because
I mean, she's a hired help, so she would be a harlot anyway, wouldn't she? In those days.
But when you think about it, though, you got Angelique's character as opposed to Josette's character, and the women are they're totally different. They're polarized.
Well, another thing that I find quite interesting is that all the women are very, very strong. You got Abigail, who's strong. You got
did a great job, Abigail.
Madame Dupre, who's extremely strong. You got Joan Bennett, even though she's in this kind of odd marriage, but there is something a bit strong. She's not as weak as she lets on. There's strength there. And then you got Angelique, who's extremely strong. So I think that what you now have is, I think that's maybe that is the reason why Josette comes off as a bit weak, because she's involved with all these strong women, and her character is written quite well.
She's very girly. She feels like like a high school girl that's in love with someone. She's just all over the place. She's very whimsical, and she's like a little too flighty for me. I don't know. She's so flighty.
But I think with Joan Bennett, I think if you're talking about strength, it's more coping mechanism strength rather than the kind of external strength that Angelique and Natalie Dupre project. And that's because she's in a loveless marriage they love each other, but they're living
he's always insinuating she's a saucepan.
That's right.
Joshua is anyway.
And it depresses her. Where's the sherry, Naomi? That kind of,
It's a bit early in the day for that, isn't it?
Yeah, but the thing is, we do get Naomi's character getting a bit strong with the simple fact as that when we get to the point where she sticks up for Barnabas and what she does for Barnabas towards the end of this.
Absolutely.
After this was like, I'm going to put the house in your name, so therefore it's in your name, so you're not being kicked off. This is going to belong to you, sort of thing. And so we know that with that one telling storyline there, we know that. Yeah, she might be kind of meek and demure in front of Jeremiah, but at the end of the day, she does have the cahoots basically that she'll get what she needs, and she knows how to operate a system if she needs to. She'll play it safe to make life at home easy for her. Yeah, but if she needs to step up to the plate, she can.
I noticed a fun scene with Alexandra Moltke and Joel Crothers where he was Nathan Forbes. And how she handled him. I thought that was very entertaining. And I think that's another example of
was he hitting on her?
Stronger female. Yeah, he was. Well, no, not initially. She thought he was going to because that's what he regularly does.
He was trying to be serious and convince her that they thought she was a witch.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the scene.
I know what you're talking about.
And I thought that was really
that was saying, not me, Buster.
Yeah, that was kind of a good way that she handled the situation. But she didn't realize his true intention because he's so flirty that when would he possibly say something, serious? Because she didn't know what was going on, I guess.
But see, this takes you back to the old Vicky from the beginning, the one where they wrote the strength character into her, and then it was diluted with the "I don't understand what's wrong," and everything, but the strength does. But when push comes to shove, and she's against the wall, the strength really, and the scene with Trask, and boy, wasn't Jerry Lacey great as Trask, coming on in episode 285. By the judge of the quick and the dead, I abjure thee, thou serpent, and all this, and I have the whole speech, but I'm not going to say anything. I wrote the whole now, which is tied to the tree and stuff, but the argument between he's questioning Vicky. That's what I was going to talk about, Jesse. When he's questioning Vicky, and and she's trying to fight him, and she smacks him in the face, and then he smacks her in the face, and then he looks at the teleprompter. Oh, now I have to push her, and and then he pushes. but that was one of the few. Yeah, Jerry Lacey did look at the teleprompter just twice during this block, but
right.
It was during crucial points. It really was. But getting back to what you were saying, she shows her stuff once in a while, but she still realizes that she's a stranger in a strange land. And I think that's exactly what we're really talking about there.
She's awfully relaxed about getting transported into time and everything.
Well, I think
I'd be losing my shit.
Yeah, but I think you kind of have to go with it, don't you? Because it's like until you can find your way back home, you kind of have to kind of just deal with it, don't you? I mean,
but you think Vicky specifically would know the times that she was living in? I mean, I know they didn't really have witch trials at this point in time, but you'd think she would maybe be a little more timid once she heard the accusations being thrown around, because it is kind of crucible.
Yeah.
But she kind of kept up being a little, big for her britches, considering the time that she was in. That works for, being in the 1960s or, the 2000s, but behaving like that, amongst people who are accusing you of being a witch is kind of maybe not the best idea.
You just said, oh, come on. Me? Come on. I'm such a nice girl. That kind of thing.
You got Abigail snooping around in her room all the time.
Wonderful performance. Wonderful performance.
I have to sit there and say some of the most hateful people are and hateful meaning hateful in a good way that you just love to hate them. Abigail and Reverend Trask. I mean,
I know.
The hate just consumes you as you're watching it.
The Bobbsey twins. They really. Actually, I think they gave some of the strongest performances in this. And of course, I'm going to talk about that later. But I mean, I think they gave some of the strongest performances. And what Jerry Lacey introduced into the Reverend Trask character, which of course is totally absent from the Tony Peterson character that he was before, is this pious hypocrisy and almost toxic hypocrisy that at conventions they've always praised him for it because he is essentially the he is essentially the clergyman gone mad and making and perverting the good side of Christianity and of God into something that's totally amoral and ethical and fattening.
Like when he ties her to a tree, Victoria to a tree.
and that famous speech, which I'm not gonna. Which one of these days I'll do the whole thing if everybody wants to fall asleep. But I think that's a marvelous. I think that's what he did there. God, I mean, it was overacted, but who cares? It just was. And then you had the Robert Cobert dum 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 dum. Dum, 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 and then dum, dum, and you've got that crescendo and that build up. That was the music, that crescendo, and they did it in thirds. Dum, 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 dum. That kind of thing. That's such a great counterpart. And it's just symbolic, I think, of what Dark Shadows was, the best of Dark Shadows, which is the building up to a horrific moment, and you don't know what's going to happen, but you think you know what's going to happen, and you're scared of what is, and you're not, and you're scared of what might be. That's the best.
Do you think that the love between Josette and Jeremiah? I think that it's quite weird watching this, especially the way this turns out. But you're kind of watching this, and and the weird thing I found that with Jeremiah and Josette, the love. I think the potion started it off, but the love seemed to be more real between these two people.
They seem better suited.
There seems to be a lot more sparks going on there. And when Jeremiah, unfortunately, has the duel and he dies, and this is where Kathleen Scott really comes out of the shell here when she gives her. How can you does her Maria from West Side Story. Like, which one? I'm a gun. Which one killed him? Is there a bullet for you, Chino? But she kind of does that whole,
that's very good.
Thing to Barnabas. Yeah. And I think that was really very touching and everything like this. And it's kind of like, and normally what from witchcraft, from what you see in films and television, that normally when one dies, that kind of ends the spell. normally.
So,
but she has like this love, and she stands by his side, and you think that, I think that proves that maybe there was something there beyond the potion. I think the potion kicked it off, but I have a feeling that the love was real, because the love felt real.
Oh, but you see, was it love, or really was it obligation mixed in with love? Because you get a strong
I agree, because I do think, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I do think that after they were married, there is a sense of obligation within that marriage, even if he does die. And she already knows she's kind of screwed because, they already got married, even if, because I do think there's part where you get a sense the potion did wear off, and she kind of looks at Barnabas, I think, with regret, but she doesn't realize that she's put under a spell, so I think
she gets to realize that eventually.
Did they ever consummate their marriage technically? You see them in the room together.
Yeah, they were in the inn.
Oh, no, they consummated. Yeah, no, they consummated. You were in my arms an hour ago.
He got his leg over.
Back then, you had to do it to make sure the marriage was legal.
Oh, I suppose, but it's not like people were watching, and it's not like there was a baby out of that. So you do kind of wonder how the Collins family did kind of continue into the 1960s, because no one ever has any kids. Well,
Daniel. That's from Daniel.
Right.
We're not there yet, but later in the block, that's the character that David Hennessy plays. So that's
getting ahead of myself.
That's fine. That's
okay. I did notice something about this as well. I've noticed that everyone at Collinwood cannot tell a black cat from a black and white cat.
I don't know what's going on with
that. I know.
That cat was the favorite one of the entire show. I loved him. The tuxedo cat.
But they kept saying, "Have you seen the black cat? Have you seen the black cat?" And you're like, well, I'm watching, going,
it's a black and white cat.
It's like, it had white paws. Well,
it had like a white bib as well.
Did it have a white bib?
Yeah.
And I think to myself, is like, if God, even in black and white, this cat would be black and white.
Yeah.
It was the great blooper of the handler of the black cat moving across the bottom of the screen after the cat.
Right.
And the other one with Alexandra Moltke, I think it was Abigail and Natalie were talking in the old house living room or whatever, and the cat was on the divan, and then all of a sudden, while they were talking, the cat obviously got bored with the conversation, so the cat just moved off, and she's in the back, Alexandra Moltke, she starts to smile, and she goes, the cat is like bored to death, and she's like, oh, then she puts her hand in front of her mouth. That was great. That was classic. I love the cat.
Yeah, it was kind of entertaining.
I had to sit there and say, what was that sound when he was being turned into the cat?
The screech, yeah.
The screech, and then when he gets turned back, there's that screech again. It's like, what kind? Where did they get that sound effect from?
Must have scared the cat to friggin' death, because there's that smoke, and then the big sound, and the cat was like, the cat ran off. I mean, I'm surprised, but that smoke must have occurred. That effect must have occurred right near the cat, and it probably scared the shit out of him.
Probably.
Yeah. So the poor thing, but I enjoy, and of course Ben couldn't wait to kill the cat. See him coming after him with an axe. Mr. Joshua, now you're gonna get yours, Mr. Joshua. That was like really fun.
Work that jackass hard. Me
or the snake.
On the fields. That would have been funny if you actually made him into a jackass and worked that jackass hard. I kind of wanted to see that.
I would have liked to see that. That would have been great.
Didn't you guys cringe a little bit, though, when Jeremiah and Josette decided to go back to Collinwood and announce that they were married?
Yeah. That seemed
was that cringeworthy?
Yeah. It was a bit cringeworthy. And as far as the storyline going, it's like, why?
And he couldn't say anything. Jeremiah said, I can't explain,
The thing is, though, I don't understand why the family would be so upset anyway, because that means Josette's money still gets siphoned back into the family, into the Collins family, doesn't it? So whether she married,
but it was scandals.
Well, yeah, I guess the scandal, but as far as she's still at Collins, and Jeremiah is still part of the family and still part of the company.
They could have kept it up. Hypothetically, they could have kept it up. But the bottom line, I think that they wanted to show was this was a Barnabas Josette marriage. This was something that was meant to be, and everybody just expected it. And in fact, that's why And Natalie was going out of her way to say, "Come on, you got to get married to him tomorrow," because of what Vicky did with the tarot cards. And I'm really surprised that actually Vicky knew how to manipulate the tarot cards in such a way that I couldn't understand that. Is Vicky a tarot card expert? So she manipulated.
I know, because I remember that too. Yeah. I noticed that she's like, "Oh, the knight. No, not the knight. Or yeah, that's Barnabas is the knight," and she like knew which characters were who, and it was like, "Oh, that's interesting. I didn't notice that before." So it's like, did she know how to read tarot cards, or was she listening to Natalie explaining things?
That's a right.
Maybe she does a Celtic spread every once in a while when she's bored.
That sounds very.
That's my favorite.
Very erotic. The Celtic spread.
Time to lay out the cards, Tom.
Vicky's blushing.
Nothing makes me blush. Trust me.
I know.
I do have to sit there.
We're teasing, friends. We're teasing.
I do have to sit there and say, though, I don't understand the attraction for Barnabas. Why Angelique wants him and Josette's in love with him.
I don't get it. And why do women fight each other over men? It's just like it's his fault.
Women do that all the time.
It's the man's fault. Kick his ass, girls.
That's what happens. I mean, look at Jerry Springer. You'll get a lawyer, you get a female lawyer, a female doctor, and a female businesswoman who are making like millions and millions, and
fighting over some ugly, scrawny meth head.
I never understood how people would go on TV on a TV show. Maybe they were getting paid a lot of money to do it.
No, they get a holiday in Chicago.
It's ridiculous.
A weekend.
It's ridiculous to go on there and not only air their dirty laundry, but beat each other up in front of the audience, treating it like a Texas death sign.
I gotta wonder if it's staged sometimes, because I mean, even like I've seen episodes of Dr. Phil, and I'm like, these people can't all exist. Like this seems fake sometimes. Like people can't be this dumb.
I don't know. I mean, that's like Thanksgiving at my family's house.
That's funny. By the way, I do want to say something, and you fans that have already heard the blooper thing. When I should say the cast, when I was reciting the cast, I committed a blooper myself when I was talking about Dan Morgan, who played Riggs in episode 283, and 283. And instead of saying that he was born in 19-something and died in 2010, I said he was born in 2010 and he died in 1913 or something. So I just wanted everybody to know this is not Star Trek, the counterclock incident. If everybody remembers that cartoon episode where they went into an alternate universe where time flowed backward. So I didn't intend to make that, but just in case, I caught that after it went out, and I'm like, oh my God. Well, anyway.
Then we get to Reverend Trask, and
let's get to that.
I mean, timeline-wise, and I know Jesse likes to study this kind of history kind of crap. You know, they weren't really. I guess they were still hanging witches in 1795.
Not really. We're starting to enter the Industrial Revolution.
Those were old laws,
right?
Those were old laws that and again, I don't want to get too far, but much later on in the series, they tackle this. And at that particular point in time, they said they reactivated an old law from 1693 in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and it was proven somehow the judge accepted the fact that they would reactivate this old law to prosecute in the year 1840. And so I don't think they did this so much in 1795, but later on the writers tackle that. Here they don't.
Yeah, that's true. But, because I was doing research for a project about witches the other day, and I realized that, this is 1795. It's close to the 1800s. They definitely weren't having witch trials or witch hunts anymore. As far as I know that they were earlier on, but I think it started to die down, if I remember correctly, in the earlier 1700s, late 1600s.
Right.
So, I wish they would have explained that, but I guess because when does the Crucible take place?
1600s.
1600s.
Yeah. So even though that was a reference to this, I do kind of wish they would have tackled that. But maybe I guess we could assume they did something similar with reactivating a law for this. Because if they addressed that in the 1800s, that's the only thing that could make sense in 1795.
Doesn't this seem like a little bit of a nod to the Crucible to y'all?
Definitely.
Well, yeah. I mean, but I also would say that probably at this time period around 1795, you probably did. I mean, you have a religious, pious woman in Abigail who's kind of like one of those Southern Baptists who dance around with snakes, sort of thing. And I imagine you probably did.
They exist down here. I'm a Texas.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying that you probably did have, preachers around, reverends or preachers around this time who were very like that, so far end of the spectrum that probably were going around still trying to prosecute people and.
Right.
Throw off, using, God as their weapon, sort of thing. So,
right. Still are.
I mean, that still happens today. Let's be honest. So,
yeah.
Until they get caught with a hooker, and then it's all over for them.
And who knows?
I've sinned.
Jimmy Swagger.
I know. I've sinned. Please forgive me. I've sinned.
That was such a. My God.
But you got these people like preaching hate and stuff like this until they get, and then they come to find out they end up being the most cricketed of them all. Really,
right.
Absolutely.
They're actually doing more sins than the normal. Sort of.
Absolutely. Hey, did you guys catch that blooper where Natalie Grayson Hall is talking to Vicky over the tarot cards, and she drinks some wine and it goes down the wrong pipe, and she starts coughing. And she coughed throughout that whole goddamn scene. And
she did a good job maintaining herself, though, despite that.
She did a great job.
Yeah,
she did a great job. All the Grayson Hall fans can get up and sing "Holy Hosanna."
You can't say too much bad about Grayson Hall because
the tears were coming out of her eyes.
I thought she was coughing up a hairball.
That's it.
Well, she was also a smoker, so
smoking, choking, drinking.
Yeah, getting choked, but I mean that could have just been from earlier episodes.
I honestly thought it
Fred
was
choking her.
Yeah, well, she's always getting choked too. No shit, man. Who gets choked more in the Dark Shadow series?
Grayson Hall. Oh yeah. Absolutely. But not as Naomi.
Her throat got the most action.
Not as Natalie.
I mean, I find it quite interesting that. What I found kind of weird is when Natalie switches over to Abigail's side and is convinced that Victoria is a witch.
Temporarily.
Yeah.
But they're like a little coven sort of thing. It's kind of weird. They kind of like form this like the cat the Caco witches.
I was kind of disappointed in her when she did that.
But then but when Trask
I
takes
found
her
it kind
out
of
to the
interesting.
tree. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. No, that's fine. When Trask takes her out to the tree. Then that's when you see a change in Natalie. She starts to say, well, wait a minute, I mean, she really does feel that he went too far, even though she initially thought that
that's true.
Yeah.
To be honest, she's lucky that all that happened to Victoria was that she tied her to a tree. They could have thrown her over the cliff into the water and see if she floated or not.
Yeah.
If she floats, she's a witch. If she drowns, she's human.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or any other kind of torture devices, because I mean they did use brutal methods.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Long needles into the flesh.
Where's Samantha and Dora when you need them?
You don't even want to know what some of those tools do or what they're used for. I don't even think I can talk about them on this show. It's a little rated R.
Again, we're giving her a plug, but in Lara Parker's second book, the Salem Branch.
Oh yeah.
They go into that she researched that, and they went into that in great detail in the punishments and putting them into the water and taking them out of the water that she experienced, and we won't get into
a witch.
A
witch. He's a witch.
I have to say that after watching this show. Anyone that I see wearing a polyester beige knee skirt, cardigan, and blouse, I know now is a witch.
Yeah. Don't even get me going on 60s fashion.
If you look like a school marm or an old librarian, you're a witch.
Now this is fun, but when they did, when they did the 91 remake, and they repeated this whole 1795 art, and they didn't do it here, but the best thing was when Abigail was looking at Vicky's clothes, And
Yeah.
she goes, and look at these markings.
Yeah.
And what does it
That
say?
was the best.
It
Permanent
was like
press.
wash, iron, get dry.
No tumble dry, no
This
iron.
foreign language, permanent press.
They look like sigils or something, I
They
guess.
do. They do look like sigils. I thought that scene was so hilarious. Like, I mean, there's no real room to laugh in the original,
Right.
but in that one, I couldn't help but crack up because that is so hysterically
It
funny.
is. It is. It is.
Well, another thing is
Great
can you
writing.
imagine like in 1795 you show up in clothing and you have to remember from that time period with Dark Shadows in the remake sort of thing is that, you know, your clothes had those symbols on it, didn't like the iron symbol, like with the
Yeah.
cross through it and all those kind of things. So they're probably like,
Mhm.
No
Whatever,
tumble
these
dry,
symbols.
no iron.
And then you get after the duel, you know, and, you know, Jeremiah has clearly bought the farm. You know, he's mortally wounded. And does he appear to her? Is it a Josette's imagination when he appears to her bloodied and wrapped in his bandages and he's like Ebenezer Scrooge's first ghost, Jacob Marley mourning her?
No, he's really there. I think he's really there because later on you'll see why.
Yeah, it's just Timothy Gordon is playing him, and
Right.
so you know, in a way, I'm kind of sorry to see what's his name, Anthony George go because
Yeah,
he was
really good in this role.
Yeah, I
I've
really
always
liked
thought
him
he's
as
really
Jeremiah. I loved
Yeah.
him as Jeremiah.
He's
I
really
thought
good at
that was his
Jeremiah.
forte.
and he had a
Absolutely.
hell of a denouement with the scene where they have their backs, you know, with the guns and they have their backs to each other, and there's some great dialogue saying. Where Jeremiah says, "I'm not the man that I was," and then Fred says, "Then I'll remember the man that you were, and not the man that I'm going to kill." Something like that. I thought that was very good.
I do have to sit there and say though the biggest letdown is when Barnabas slaps Jeremiah. It's like, really?
Oh
When he
yeah,
what?
yeah.
When he slaps Jeremiah, I was like, how dare you take Josette? He's like, that was good. I mean, why they should just have to like Barnabas like punch him. If he punched him, it'd be like, "Yay, Barnabas!" There's a bit of masculine. But when he slapped him, you just think, "Oh, Barnabas, you are so weak."
He was doing it the way he read it in books because remember, he never had a duel. He never killed. He even says that, you know.
Well, that's the way
But
they
at the
did
same
it.
time, if you remember in the first season, Mitchell Ryan slaps. What was it? Is it Willie or someone else? He slapped someone twice.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
gosh.
somehow
What's
Mitchell
that?
Ryan pulled it
I know
off.
you're talking. I know
You're-
you're
But
talking.
see,
it's out of
I
place.
think you have if you're a
Might
guy
have
and you're gonna be
been.
slapping
Might have
someone, I think you got to be overly masculine. I think that's the
And with the back of your hand. And with the
Well,
back
I
of
don't
your
think
hand.
back then that the custom was to, you know, hurt them. I think it was just a mild insult.
Well,
wasn't
no,
it?
yeah, but in the time, I mean, as you know from the Count of Monte Cristo that we read, that basically if you're going to do something with a duel, you slap them with your gloves, didn't it?
Right, right.
So maybe if he had gloves in his hand, maybe it would have come across better. But because he did it with a slap, it's kind of like, you know, I've seen butcher slaps coming from, you know, Joan Bunnett. I mean, it's like, oh God, what? Oh, you should. Where I think if Barnabas punched him in the face, I think it would have been so dramatic. It would have been more. Be like, but I think I just saw he like slapped him. I went like that.
Or even just roughed him up a bit and like, you know, pinned him against the wall and was like shook him or something. You know, just something kind of crazy.
But that's
How
but
dare you
that's
take my
pre-Barnabas.
wife's virginity or something.
That's the difference. Now there's
That
the
was my
difference.
cherry to pop.
Yeah.
The difference between the pre-vampire Barnabas and the after vampire Barnabas, because the after vampire Barnabas would take him and throw him up against the wall and beat the hell out of him.
Probably choke him.
Probably choke him. Instead of suck the
out his
life
wrist.
force out of him like he's
Suck out
supposed to
his
be a
wrist.
vampire.
Suck on it. Yeah, Jesse said suck on his wrist because he's male.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. You got to suck on the wrist because it's not man. Yeah, that is kind of bordering taboo back then, though. So we
Yeah.
already discussed that.
But I think another. I think this is I'll go back how I thought about these episodes because I think they're fantastic. But you know if you take it apart and then like after he like slaps him and then he goes off in a hissy fit like stamps off like how dare you and it goes running off and you're like oh. Yeah, not Barnabas, you know, strongest moment there sort of thing. Oh. Like, oh no, now he's going off in a hissy fit. Oh no.
Then you got Jeremiah doing his carry routine on Josette, who's the only one that seems to be mourning Jeremiah at this point.
Yeah, I found that a bit odd, actually, that there wasn't any more mourning going on for, the plight of Jeremiah after the duel.
Yeah, like his own
he
family
hung around
didn't
for a
seem to
couple of
care.
weeks before they kicked him off.
Yeah, but I think you could add
between life and
Naomi,
death.
Jeremiah pulling into his room, going, "Oh, I hope but you didn't really get Josette in his room a lot, and then Barnabas,
Or at least Naomi, because
guess
I don't think Jeremiah would, really care. He doesn't seem to care about anything.
Technically, he's Barnabas's uncle, so he was Joshua's brother.
That's
Joshua's
right.
brother.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, but Joshua spent most of these episodes as a cat, didn't he? So I guess he couldn't.
Well, a few
Well,
of
no,
them.
he was back by he came back by this time. He came
Right.
back.
Yeah, he was
And-
back. Yeah.
And the way that Joshua operates, Joshua is all about keeping the family strong. And even though he disapproved
safe
of their
from
marriage,
scandal.
I think that, but at the same time, it's like, I think he would also go, he would have came around and was like, okay, well, fine. It's like, you can, okay, you married her, but at least the money. I think that Joshua is probably more money oriented than he would be Scandal. Because at the end of the day, this family, there could be a scandal, but this family doesn't really have to worry about scandal. They own the town. It's like you scandalize.
But also, there's
you've got
no
about me. You're without a
townspeople at this
job.
point.
I'll fire you.
There's no
Right,
townspeople
right.
at this point. It's all like inside the house. So it's like where would the scandal even take place? Who's going to see it? It's all like inside the house, and they
But he
never
wants
leave
to make
the
sure
house.
it
for the
stays
most part.
inside the house.
Yeah.
That's why he was so adamant with Trask. Joshua was very adamant with Trask. That this all be done undercover, and he didn't want the townspeople. That's all he needed, was to get the townspeople get wind of the fact that there might be a witch. And then the townspeople would probably come try to burn him down with stakes and stuff like that, with firebrands. So that part is very important.
Then there's adding insult to injury, because this is about the same time that doesn't Angelique get Barnabas to marry her in these episodes?
Yep.
Yeah.
The funny, the great,
Because
most,
the little girl's ill, Sarah's ill.
and that's exactly right, Sarah. And the most interesting thing was they did this when Angelique stuck pins in the Raggedy Ann doll. And by the way, Raggedy Ann dolls didn't start coming around until 1915.
Right.
So
Wait, she did that in a Raggedy Ann doll? I thought it was that
Raggedy Ann
Cornhusk
doll.
that she always
I thought it was a Cornhusk doll too.
I think it was a Raggedy. That's different. But the one that she stuck the pin in, I think, was a Raggedy Ann doll, and that doesn't come till. But all this happened around Christmas of that year. So, and I point that out in the segment. While everybody is going to church and having their Christmas turkey dinners and thinking of good cheer and everything, Dark Shadows gives you a witch who's trying to stick pins into a 10-year-old kid and get her sick.
It's like for those people that
Merry
wanted
Christmas.
Halloween to last longer, they got that instead.
Good point.
But also,
Good
it's
point.
like when you watch sitcoms and TV shows, typically I think they always had like a holiday episode according to whatever holiday it was, especially if it was Christmas. Dark Shadows didn't do that. I'm sure there were other shows that also didn't abide by that, but I thought it was
soap
interesting
operas
too.
normally during the day would do Christmas episodes.
During the day, they still do. They do Thanksgiving.
Days of Our Lives.
Okay.
General Hospital does.
Yeah,
still
they
to
still
this
celebrate
day.
the holidays. Sunset Beach.
But not by sticking pins into
What's that,
dolls.
Keith?
Sunset Beach.
Sunset Beach.
But that's my point.
I used to go up and watch Sunset Beach. It was excellent.
But they don't celebrate holidays by sticking pins into dolls, and that's I think where Dark Shadows gave it.
Dark Shadows never celebrate any holidays, though, did they? They never, there's never any
You don't hear
Christmas,
about
never
them.
Halloween,
Or
no
birthdays
Thanksgiving,
even.
no
They don't even
birthdays.
celebrate birthdays. You
That's
hear
true.
like when I think Vicky at one point tries to explain where she got her charm bracelet, and I think at one point she says, I think Carolyn gave it to her on her birthday, but you never see any birthday scenes or Christmases or Thanksgiving, like no holidays, not even Halloween, which would be totally fitting for
Zodiac
Dark Shadows.
bracelet. Was that the Zodiac bracelet that you're talking about?
Yeah, they say it's a Zodiac bracelet.
What is
But
Zodiac bracelet?
yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, that's another thing about the Zodiac bracelet where Natalie Dupree goes, "What's this?" And you're thinking, well, you're reading tarot cards. You should know what a Zodiacs are.
I would think so.
So that was,
yeah.
I mean, Abigail.
Right? Yeah. That's true. Sometimes I wonder, because I think Natalie was kind of a bit of a wannabe occultist, because she doesn't actually seem that well educated as far as the occult goes. Like, I know a little bit more than she does about some of the stuff she's talking about, and it's like, well, I'm just doing it from research, not because I'm necessarily a practitioner. And then she's supposed to be like a practitioner of the esoteric and the occult, and she's not really very well educated.
And Trask challenges her on that. If you remember, when he's questioning her, and he says, "You read tarot cards? Do you read tarot cards? Does this mean that you believe you can foretell the future?" And she's like, "Well, I do believe." He goes, "Then you are not religious." And she says, and this is interesting. And then she says, "I'm religious. I have my own beliefs, and don't you tell me where to go." And for $17.95 to give him back, and he's afraid of her power. He's afraid of her perceived power. He's afraid of her wealth.
Yeah.
And that's.
But he's also. I mean, she's a woman of culture and money as well. So I mean, he can go after the hired help, but when you start coming after the main family, you need to take a step back, don't you?
If the Dupreys were religious, wouldn't they be like Catholic or something? Isn't that what? Was it the religion around
was kind
in
of
that
a
area?
weird time back
then.
They
were
Anglican, wasn't it?
Protestant.
Okay.
Will they be Protestant or Catholic? I think
Protestant. I think.
I guess
wasn't there
the reign of Queen Margot, isn't it?
Wasn't there a time when Josette was praying to like a saint or something? When she was, I thought she used something like prayer beads or something, and while praying, or was that my imagination? She used something. I thought.
I don't remember.
I mean, they could have been Catholic. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, another thing is they don't really wear. I mean, none of them really wear any religious paraphernalia. Even Abigail, you think would be wearing a crucifix or something.
Something, yeah. She doesn't wear anything at all either.
I think they might have wanted to keep that religious stuff out of the show.
Yeah, that's probably true. Because even as far as like the magic is concerned, they didn't like go in depth. It was a very generalized kind of generic sense of magic. It wasn't like, leaning towards one specific, dark religion or anything. Even when you are dealing with Angelique, like it was still a very generalized kind of
Wiccan kind of thing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was kind of more of the Wiccan,
except
pre-witch.
Except, and this is pre-1795, if you recall, and that was the one time when Barnabas had to do some kind of a ceremony.
That's true.
Remember that? And he said he learned it from when he was in Barbados or something.
Yeah.
Like that. And he put something in a cup, and he started. And this is very unusual for Barnabas, because you never see him doing this kind of thing where he's just he's whispering and mumbling into the cup and stuff like that. And I think Woodard's ghost appeared or something like that as a result. But so that's the one instance where I think he is actually they're drawing on that kind of specific magic. But other than that, I agree with you. You kind of wonder where she gets all her spells, because it's all, she's an esoteric witch. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
She's an esoteric witch. She pulls them from all the schools.
Well, honestly,
pulling the voodoo out though. She's got a little mix of Haitian hoodoo. She's got it all going.
Yeah. But then again, to be honest, we discussed Jesse and I discussed this in the past, and to be honest, if this was filmed in another time than the 60s, Angelique really probably should have been black.
Yes.
Or mixed race.
Yeah.
Because they were thinking of doing that for this whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and it would make more sense, because that way the hoodoo, the black magic, the culture, all that stuff would have tied in very well with it.
Made a whole lot more sense.
And if I interpreted Lara Parker's book correctly, I do think even she insinuates that Angelique is biracial, because she has a black mother and then a white father.
Okay. Yeah.
Which would make a lot more, and we'd be able to get all that tribal magic in there, and all.
Yeah,
because that stuff's still ripe in islands as well.
Because in her book,
practice it. There's a lot of people out there that practice it.
Because in Lara Parker's book, I think there's a lot of like weird mystery, even from the birth of Angelique, because they wonder why she's so pale and has blonde hair. Like, whose child is this? Because she's so pale, and even though it's supposed to, her mother has like really dark skin. Her father always thinks that she's just this kind of crazy, mesmerizing, beautiful devil child or something. So there's always this kind of, creep factor going on, even as, when she was a child. So it's such a fascinating book. I'm really glad Lara Parker wrote that, because it really adds so much more serious depth to her character, and then some of the other characters around that. But Angelique is just as much of a tragic figure in her books as Barnabas is in the show.
Right.
So I think that makes sense why they kind of are destined to be together in this kind of, mental paradigm in every Dark Shadow fan's mind, I think.
Yeah.
I have to say that if she was mixed race or black, and that it would make so much more sense of why Barnabas couldn't marry her, and all the other stuff would make
Exactly. Good point.
Now you got to realize also at this point that Sam Hall is getting into the act as one of the main writers. Grace's husband. And you can see the influence. Gordon Russell does a little subbing, but once again, and some of this stuff, some stuff is weaker than others, but once again, the Abigail stuff and the Trask stuff, and just very, very strong. It really fleshes out their characters, and he seems to have a kind of a talent for that.
Do you think that every time Julia or Natalie Dupre she gets choked, do you think it might be like he wrote that in like when he got really angry with his wife? Like, I'm just choke her.
Never know. What a great. That's right. What a great way to deal with it. I never thought of that.
I always get a kick out of Grayson Hall's face. She has the most facial face you ever seen. I mean, when she's definitely, she's just got all these looks. I mean,
she's an expressive actress.
I don't know how to explain it, but
and do you see
she's got the facial expressions for everything.
And you see where the mole travels, by the way, the adventure of the traveling mole. That's what I call it. And so it starts out in the lower left-hand chin, and it actually looks like a gray melanoma, and then all of a sudden it migrates mysteriously to the right cheek.
Well, it's interesting because I think those are based on
it disappears altogether.
And beauty
they
marks.
used to do that back then, though, especially the French. They had those little sticker things.
They used to draw
beauty
them
marks.
Oh, I didn't know that. You mean they actually have false little things
They
that they
did,
put
yeah.
on there?
It was in vogue back in the 1700s.
Oh, that's interesting.
They powdered their faces and put beauty marks in several different locales.
But they didn't.
I do know that beauty marks would move on their faces according to how they wanted to be perceived. I don't remember exactly what they mean.
I read that.
But beauty marks were supposed to represent different things. Like if you wanted... if you were open to being more like, I don't know, sexually open or like wanted to have an affair, you'd put it on your left cheek. That's just an example. I don't know if that's an actual thing.
I think they need to bring that back.
If that's the case, Natalie was hot to trot. Let me tell you.
They did have weird ones like that.
It was hot to trot.
Did they have like stars and stuff? Because some of them have like
I did see a star.
I
did see a star, not in this block, but in the prior block.
Hearts. They had all kinds of shit. Look, Google it, Jesse. It's actually kind of interesting.
So kudos to them.
Really
then.
Interesting.
Kudos to the writers in it. They were aware of that, and they were putting the moles in different places. I thought it was a blooper.
Yeah, King Louis XIV used to like have move them around in his
I said correctly.
They were kind of dandies back then, weren't they?
The men and the women. So,
just a dandelion.
Now I have a question about Reverend Trask tying Josette Vicky to the tree.
Yeah.
Now, what was that supposed to prove? Was she either going to die from the elements, and if she was alive, she was a witch, or what? I mean, what was going to happen?
I think it was like a test. I honestly think
but to be tied to a tree.
He never said why. He never said why.
Yeah, because Trask was kind of a fraud, and I don't think he knew what was going to happen.
Oh, he definitely. She was able to play him.
Her.
Do you remember Angelique was able to play him because when he started questioning her and she started to go into a rapture and she says, I see the new house and I hear voices talking from the new house. And Joshua says, what's going on here? And she and Trent says she's either a complete charlatan or she's having an actual vision, an actual revelation. And that's interesting because he's trying to decide, and he decides to make the mistake, and he figures, well, she's having a revelation. He probably liked the way she looked, also. And
Do you think that if Nathan didn't cut Victoria away from the tree, and then Victoria stayed there in the morning, that she probably wouldn't be considered a witch?
That she wouldn't be considered?
She wouldn't, because to be honest, it's like, because let's be honest, I mean, what kind of puts the stake in the whole situation is that, you know, Nathan cuts her away. Angelique blows up the tree. The trees.
That's right. Well, remember she was,
and that kind of adds fuel to the fire.
Them. Yeah, remember she was following them, and then she kind of slid back in the bushes when Barnabas and Nathan rescued her. Mm-hmm. But if they hadn't done that, and she was still tied to the tree, would she have blown the tree up with Vicky? With Vicky attached, in which case Vicky would have died right there and we wouldn't have had a story? Or would she have let Vicky escape and then set fire to the tree? I don't know. We don't know.
Or she just left Vicky there and just let. Because I mean, it's kind of hard to tell what. I mean, to be honest, if something happens, they were doing some of the other witchcraft trials that they did back in the day at Salem and so on and so forth. Then I could, I guess you can understand. But this test is like, don't understand what he was hoping that would happen to her.
Well, yeah, but also it doesn't have anything to do with what they actually did in witchcraft trials. So I'm like, I don't understand where they got the idea for this either. But do you remember what they did in the 90s version? Did they have a scene like this at all?
I can't remember.
I don't remember that in the 90s version.
I don't think they had anything like that.
I don't think they got that far, did they?
Yeah.
They got with the Ben Cross series, the one with Ben Cross.
Yeah.
Joanna Going. They got the very last episode was when she comes back. They hung her and she is back in our time. Yeah. And her and Barnabas are looking at each other with that knowing look. It's like, well, the jig is up, basically. And that's where that ended.
Oh, okay. Right.
Okay. So
I remember coming out of the fireplace at one point. Angelique coming out of the fireplace.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I just found it quite interesting. I was like, ooh, I wonder what that was supposed to prove. Like, if she lived,
I was trying to figure that out
witch, or if she's just hungry, would she be considered a witch, or would she be human?
Because, like, with the river thing, it's like that would make more sense because either way, you're doomed in that situation. So, but with the tree thing, it's like, that doesn't prove much of anything. Like, what happens? Like, if she stays alive.
I mean, if it's a dead,
nothing happened.
Remember that.
I mean, it was like in the dead of winter, there was snow everywhere, and her breath could be seen, and it was really cold. And okay, fine, I can understand, but I mean, again, winter never enters Collinwood. The snow never comes.
And remember, they can't recreate a river on the set, but what they can do is, and it looked like some kind of pipe. It looked like a broken pipe rather than a burnt tree, and the gas and steam is coming out of a broken pipe, and maybe that's what it really was, a broken pipe, and they put the tree stuff over it, the paper mache.
It was filmed good. I have to say, when you see the tree blown up, and the filming of it was really good. I mean, it looked really good on screen.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't this the first time that they ever actually had like forest scenes, like people wandering through the woods?
No, they had that before. They had that.
Did they?
Yeah. They did this weird thing when it first went to color. They did this green screen effect, which didn't play off.
Yeah.
Because the light was was also like going against them sometimes, and I think then they changed it up. But then you could see like the outline, and I think they tried different techniques that just didn't pan out.
But
I have to say, this is the first time that when they were outside, it looked a little bit better than what the set.
Yeah, because you could actually interact with it. I don't know, make it look like they were coming out of the trees or something.
And maybe the forest, maybe the fact they were able to do it in color had something to do with it. But back in the black and white segments, they had 20 minutes of Burke and Joe going through the forest looking for Maggie.
That's true.
Remember
that's
that?
true.
Remember
David and Laura.
I forgot.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And I mean, you wonder, well, what the hell are they going to get lost or something like that? Because they were actually
walking around in a circle
the same set
of trees.
Well, I do find it interesting. I just thought of this as far as Abigail and Natalie are concerned. I do feel like it's an interesting pairing because on one hand, you feel like they're both frauds, as far as, or heretics, I guess. Well, they're still kind of frauds, but, I think Abigail's a heretic. But then if she is as heretical as, she seems, why would she pair up with someone like Natalie, who's a tarot card reader, even a little bit? Because most heretical Christians I know don't want to compromise even a little bit with.
But I think Abigail will, because I think Abigail's place in the house she's considered a bit of a freak within her own household. Well, it is, and I think, and then if she can get someone on her side, I think that she'll forgive whatever they're into, just as long as she's got someone fighting in her corner.
It seems very selfish. Yeah, it seems just like, oh, you're disposable, and I'm using you to get my needs met or whatever in this situation.
Well, I mean, if you look at Abigail before this, anyway, it's like the first time you see Abigail, she's there with Naomi and Joshua, and Abigail's splurting off whatever she's splurting off, and Naomi's like, oh God, here she goes again, and Joshua's like, oh, for God's sakes, Abigail. I was like, okay, I'll agree with you, just shut up. It's kind of that whole
interplay. I love that interplay, by the way, between Joshua and Abigail.
And so I think, and so for that, I would imagine that, no, Natalie's on the other side of the fence from what Abigail believes in. I think that because Natalie believes in Abigail, it's like this is helping fuel her fire. That's why she, because she's a religious, pious woman in a land full of people who are not that religious. So I think that she'd take any kind of crumb that was given to her and run with it, sort of thing. She's like a magpie, isn't she, Abigail?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One way to put it, I guess.
I'm a little disappointed, though, in the pre-Barnabas and in this block. I mean, he shows himself to be a real. Okay, so obviously it was. She got Sarah sick, and the thing is, Barnabas promised her that he would marry her if she could cure her, and then she goes ahead and cures her, and then he says, "Well, I didn't really mean that." That kind of, I mean, I was desperate. That's why I said it. Well, so what?
Yeah.
He still made the promise. And
see, but this where I think it falters a little bit because the thing is like, okay, you look at all the stuff that's going on here, and who has the most to gain? Well, Victoria doesn't have anything to gain from all the stuff that's going on here. No. So it's like, but then you look at Angelique, because like all this stuff's going on. And all of a sudden, like Sarah gets ill, and then Angelique's the only person, and then the excuse that Angelique uses, like, I'll help her if you marry me. Should have given Barnabas a little bit of clue, like, you're behind everything. You're the person, you're the witch, or whatever, because it starts adding up. And I think that if you just stood back and looked at the situation.
Or even Natalie, like, why didn't someone pick up on it? It makes sense that maybe someone like Josette wouldn't, because Josette was under her spell and was being manipulated by her. But like, why wouldn't someone like Natalie or
Josette's not the brightest bulb in the pack either,
that
unfortunately.
Too.
But I do think that normally if anyone's going to do a crime or witchcraft or whatever, it's normally because it's to get something to benefit.
Yeah, there's a motive. There's always a motive.
You need a motive.
But no one considers the motive really. They just think, oh, who's the weirdest person? Who's the outcast in the situation? Because we know these people. And because we know them, they can't be bad. Like, that's their logic, and it makes no sense. It's like you can't assume just because you know someone really well that they don't have insidious motivations, behind closed doors.
Right,
like, their thinking it totally is naive.
Yeah, I just wonder. Yeah, I found that a bit weird. I just found it weird with Angelique. It's like, it's like all of a sudden Sarah gets ill out of nowhere.
Right.
With a doll, like, oh, I got appendicitis or whatever's wrong with her, and then all of a sudden, and then it's like, I can fix her, but you're gonna have to do this for me. It's like, oh, and then you're making a special tea brew potion sort of thing to help her out.
Back then,
by picking weeds out of the garden.
Yeah, that would have been considered witchcraft back then. I think that comes. I mean, I think the term pharmakia kind of comes from that idea.
Yes.
I mean, if she was a midwife, if Angelique was a midwife, which midwives at this point would use to make, stuff, medicines and stuff like this, I could understand. But she's not a midwife. She's a common kitchen scully,
Yeah.
kitchen slag. That's what she is, really. You know, I mean, she's just the maid, isn't she? It's like,
Yeah,
she is. Yep.
Now,
but, you know,
I have to say the scene between Angelique and Nathan Phobes when he's smuggling out food for Victoria, I thought that was quite a good scene between those two.
I was just going to say, and you know, and the interesting thing is there's an inner layer of decency, which totally disappears later in the block, later after this block with Nathan. But you actually see that he is concerned about Vicky.
That's true.
Yeah, and also,
short-lived.
the thing between Angelique and him, where you just get she's the more evil one, and he's fumbling and and making excuses, and unfortunately, I think Joe Crowther's talent, and he did a great job, but it was the writers. The writers gave him a bumbling kind of I'm making excuses for this and I'm making excuses for that, and that takes up some time, I think.
And he dresses to the right, so that's quite good.
What's that?
And he dresses to the right.
You could not tell almost, right?
It's like God Almighty. You might want to wear a jock next time.
Well, you never know with that uniform. He's always in the same goddamn uniform.
Yeah.
Well, back then they used to wear cod
pajamas.
pieces.
Yeah, they did wear. I don't know if they wore cod pieces unless they were going to war, though. Because I remember, you know what? That just when I was when we went to the Tower of London, I had this would just hit me like a ton of bricks. They have the Tower of London, Henry VIII's. You probably seen it, Keith. His armor, and that man had the biggest cod piece that probably ever was made.
Well, the cod
they do have different types of cod pieces.
Well, the cod pieces in England are quite interesting because they weren't flat.
No,
they weren't thing. What happens is that your male member would actually go in, and your male member would hang out of your body in this leather sack sort of thing. Oh, wow. So basically, you can see the penis and everything, and of course,
like a jock.
And the more money and the more vein you had, you could actually fill the. No. Basically, it's shaped to your penis, sort of thing. And if you had enough money and you had enough going, you could actually have that stuff with a little bit of cotton to make it look bigger.
It was a huge cod piece. That's all I had to say.
Yeah.
It's like Henry VIII had it going on.
Yeah. I'm Henry VIII. I am Henry VIII. I am.
So that's what all the ladies were fighting over.
Well, helps you have money and you have a kingdom as well. Even
it's a small detail, I know. Yeah.
But then this is what I don't understand. Okay, they're hiding Victoria. Why hide her in the new house? Why not just drop her off at the Blue Whale in town? It's like, you know what I mean? It's like
the Eagle, I think it was called.
The Eagle at that time, because you're thinking like
something, yeah.
Town.
Yeah,
it's like you're hiding her under Wolf's nose. It just doesn't make any sense.
Unless
it's like
it was
right in
closer. Unless it was closer from the old house. I think it was. They even mentioned that it was 15 minutes away. Well, 15-minute walk from the old house. So maybe it was more of a trip to get into the town.
Well, it can't be that much because David used to walk in the town from the new house.
There's another glitch.
The earlier episodes, the insane asylum was 100 miles away, and that was a half-hour walk.
And you go Hill Cemetery. You go Hill Cemetery. They were there in 15 minutes.
Sarah and Maggie. I mean, maybe it was Sarah's powers. They were able to make 100 miles in a half hour.
They actually should have been interesting to see. What they should have done before they wrote this show is actually make a map so they knew where everything was. It kind of
exactly.
Absolutely.
But then Victoria does something really stupid. She hears them coming. She's got her food sack there. She just leaves her food behind, and she goes on. It's like, take your food with you. Hello.
Nobody closes doors. Everyone always leaves something
and the windows
for them
are
to
open,
find them.
For God's sakes.
It bugged me. Like I remember when Maggie was escaping in the earlier episodes when Barnabas kidnapped her, and she just left the door wide open. It's like, why would you do that? Because then you're showing him there's a secret door that he maybe previously didn't know about, and you're letting him know where you went. Like that's just so dumb to me. It seems like common sense to close the spot so you make it harder for him to find you.
And it's the same thing. Why did Vicky leave the goddamn window open when
exactly?
Because a dead. That's a plot giveaway. I mean, obviously they were meant to try and find her or something.
Yeah, that's true.
The suspicion.
It would have been a bit better. I think it just would have been a bit clever if something happens like that. She goes, she pulls, she gets off the crate that she's sitting on and like rips her garment and some of her garments there or something.
I just thought it
would
was
have been
cool.
A bit better. I think.
I just thought it was cool, that scene with Nathan and Vicky in the new Collinwood, which hadn't been built yet, and they're sitting on two wooden barrels. And if you liken that to the present day Collinwood with all the lovely furniture and the piano, and here they are sitting on these two beer barrels while they're having sandwiches or something like that, or whatever the heck it was. It looked like chicken. I don't know.
Food scraps. So we're going to go to the dog, but we'll give it to Victoria.
I also noticed Angelique looked a little bit too made up in the last few episodes. I mean, she looked great, but for being a maidservant, considering when she first came, she's like way overdone. Like her hair is like in a giant bouffant, and she's got tons of makeup on. And she's
starting to marry up now, isn't she? Right. She's getting ready to marry up. Yeah. Now, I have to say though, I mean, I think if I was disappointed with this block, the only thing I would be very disappointed is I kind of wish they made a little bit more of Jeremiah's death.
Yeah.
Like had a nice funeral sequence or something, because it's like wham, baby's in the ground. It's like, okay, he's dead. Okay, moving on. It's like, you think this person just died. He's a member of your family. He was beloved when we were introduced for him, that everyone loved Jeremiah. And all of a sudden it's like he's dead and no one cares. It just kind of felt anticlimactic, his death. I know that we do get him coming back to Josette as the zombie. As a
ghost. Jeremiah, the zombie. It's really a zombie ghost or something like that.
But you just kind of wish that they would have made more of that sort of thing. Only because it would have been nice to have like a nice little sequence where they're all around at the gravestone and they're mourning his death or just something.
And by the way, they shot him in the chest, and the next thing you know, his whole head is covered in bandages.
Yeah,
and I thought because he landed
chest wound.
I think it's because he landed on the stairs when he fell. Because he landed up against the steps, isn't he? Like this, when his head's up against the steps, and Josette's crying over him, and he's like laying there. I thought maybe that's where the head wound came. He just landed on the steps and crashed his head on the stone stairs.
Did Joshua even know that Naomi gave the old house to Barnabas after?
No, not in this block. It hasn't come out yet, because this block ends with her talking to Barnabas about the wedding gift that she's going to give to Barnabas and Angelique, and that's kind of
right.
And that's kind of where we come to an end in this block.
And was it in this block that Angelique thanked her because Angelique really had respect for Naomi, because Naomi was wishing them well, and Angelique thought that this is the only member of the Collins family that's really given me a break. That's the and that's why I don't think Angelique ever ran after Naomi or ever cast a spell on Naomi. And you'll see later what happens to Naomi, which I don't want to get into. Right. But but there's the one, there's Naomi having a really good heart, and wishing and saying, I don't care what Joshua cut him off. But
did you think they cut him off because he's marrying the hired help, though?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Because he's marrying the hired help.
Yeah.
I did find weird that Jeremiah dies. The next day, Josette's like, "Okay, Jeremiah said I can come back to you," but Barnabas is like, "That was a bit odd." It's like
the spell was off. The spell was
true.
Off.
The spell was broken.
The spell was broken. The devil's mark was gone. And by the way,
all she needed is rose water. It wipes it right off.
I know. Rose water.
I have a modern. You use hand sanitizer instead. It works wonders.
Look, he's got he's got the devil's mark on the left hand. Jesse, show us the devil's
I'll show you. Okay, so this is how you get it off in the modern times. You take hand sanitizer.
There you go.
And
now that's what you call cinema verite.
And you can also drink your hand sanitizer if you run out of tequila.
Yeah, exactly.
So Jesse, who are you in love with now? That you got that devil's mark. You got that.
Josette. Josette.
And look,
See, it's all gone.
And because
just like magic.
But it might come back tomorrow, and when it comes back tomorrow, it'll be on the other hand.
I got
just
more
like it was in Dark
sanitizer.
Shadows.
Hand sanitizer because of COVID's found everywhere.
Remember, it was on Dory Kavanaugh's hand in the dream, the left hand, and then the next one in Catherine Leigh Scott, it was Devil's Mark was in the right hand.
Why in the dream did they have a different person play Josette? Did you know, like in Naomi's dream, they had a different person play Josette, but they had Jeremiah there.
Yeah.
Is
that the one with the arm?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. That's the one where you had the blooper. You had the blooper of the technician underneath Dory Kavanaugh as she's kissing Jeremiah, and you'll see it. It's a great view of him. He's got a red shirt, a red short sleeve shirt and dark pants, and he's handing the arm to Dory Kavanaugh so she can attach it. But why? I don't know unless maybe Catherine.
I know why.
Go ahead. Why?
Probably they didn't want to pay Catherine Lee Scott a day more.
That's what I was going to say.
Dan Curtis is tight. You got to remember he was.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
Dory Kavanaugh was Phyllis Wick in the seance scene. So they brought.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
That's right. So they brought her back.
She's just an instant. She's
what
Kathleen Scott. They would pay her more money because she has lines, and so this one, because she has no lines, they might as well get an extra.
But if you're watching,
kind of like a glorified extra, really, because she had lines.
Yeah.
But if you're watching on a big screen, you can see it's not Catherine Leigh Scott. You can see it's Dory Kavanaugh or whoever.
Right.
It's a different face.
I think in the day, though,
different voice too.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think in the day, you probably would have noticed that because everyone's TV screens are all so snowy.
There was no Ultra HD back then.
Yeah,
that's
sort
true.
of thing.
That's true. Oh no, you wouldn't have seen it back then.
You would have recognized her voice though, because her voice was totally different than Catherine Lee Scott's, or any character on the show.
Absolutely.
Now we come to the end of this block, and basically we have Naomi giving the old house to Barnabas as a present, and then we got the scene between Angelique saying thank you. But then we get Jeremiah's ghost pays a visit to Barnabas, which kind of like bum bum bum, which I think was a good way to actually finish this block. I know that we do these in blocks, and normally it's like I have to say for the blocks that we've done, that's probably the strongest block between 375 because we had like a really good going into it, and then also we got like a really good cliffhanger. We weren't left with like okay, sort of
middle of nowhere, yeah.
So I think this now brings us to our favorite character and our least favorite character of this block. So, Tom, who is your favorite character of this block, and who's your least favorite character?
My first thought was the cat as the best, the best character. After I put that, I'm going to give the cat honorable mention because let's say I love cats. I had two of them of my own, and it was. I only wish I could have found out the gender and the name, and I mean that information is lost unless the trainer's still alive. If he's out there, or she's out. If he's out there, because it was his head. So if he's out there, contact us. info@llpodcast.com. But anyway, we
want to interview the cat.
Yeah, well, that's right.
I would imagine the cat being long dead.
Well, maybe the cat's descendant.
The cat's
granddaughter. That's it.
Well, probably the cat's great granddaughter, right?
Absolutely. We'll get out. Hey, speaking of the cat, whatever happened? Well, what did they do for litter back then? I mean,
they usually went outside, wouldn't they?
I guess they just. Probably pissing shit all over the house.
Probably on your clothes in your closet because cats have bad attitudes.
But to be honest, they probably would use sand.
Probably.
But the hand fans in 1790?
No, sand. Like sand.
Oh, sand. Yeah, sand. Yeah. Okay, so they'd have the sand.
So maybe they brought sand inside in those days.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Anyway, getting back to your question. So the best, I have to, it's a toss-up between Jerry Lacey and Clarice Blackburn. I thought their performances were excellent. I thought Clarice Blackburn, she wasn't in a lot of episodes at this point also, but a few more. And she really came through as a heretical, as a heretic. Well, I should say, yeah. And Jerry Lacey's performance stands out on his own. He really punched it. And I think that both of them, synergistically, really contributed to that evil, and even it got Lara Parker worried at first, until she realized how easily she could play him. When she heard of the witch hunter, you should see her eyes when she heard of the witch hunter.
Most witch hunters are sexually repressed.
And Trask is no exception. And there's another sexually
priest.
We're not going to get into it, but there's a warlock who's sexually repressed much later on in the series, and we'll talk about. But it's very, very obvious. But anyway, now as for worst, that's kind of hard. Unless you're going to take one of the day players, I think they were all. I think they were all pretty good.
I don't really have any one
Riggs,
character.
maybe Dan Morgan, who played Riggs, he was kind of. Well, they didn't give him a lot to do. He was just kind of stiff.
Right.
Even Reverend Alton, whatever, the guy who played the Reverend, the old guy, he was pretty. He acted. So I would say Dan Riggs, but I think they were all pretty good. I think this block, with the exception, I agree with Keith, of why couldn't they give Anthony George a better ending?
Send off,
and then in fact, they forgot about him for 7 days. You didn't even hear about what the hell was going on with Jeremiah.
He's probably getting pretty ripe somewhere. They decided to put him in the ground.
So anyway, that's my take on it.
What about yourself, Vix?
I kind of like the witch coming out in Angelique. Finally, you hear all about Angelique, and they kind of build you up. And finally, you got the episodes that bring down the House of Cards. How Angelique and all the interaction. And I just like to see she's a really strong force in this. So I really enjoyed Lara Parker's part as Angelique in this. And I'm having a hard time not liking anybody's. I guess we didn't see too much of Millicent in these episodes. But, I love Nancy Barrett, but God, man, I feel like slapping the shit out of Millicent. I don't know why. And the thing is, she's doing a great job acting. It's an annoying character is what I'm saying. So she's absolutely doing her job in that. But, other than that, Trask was fantastic. All of them were really quite strong in this block. It's hard to disseminate and say I didn't really think one was better than the other. Although I'm going to go with, George Anthony not really getting the send off. He probably
Anthony George,
should have.
Right,
yeah,
right. Anthony George.
God, man, need more drugs. But
listen, I got that birth. I got the date of death before the date of birth. You're entitled. What the heck?
You got the date of birth wrong. For shame.
No, I transposed them, remember?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're all transposing. It shows our age today. Excuse us, younger listeners.
Sorry.
We're having senior moments.
Where's getting old? Oh,
no, but I liked them all. What about you, Keith?
What about you, Jesse? It's Jesse's turn.
Oh, okay. I actually have to agree with Vicky. I think Lara Parker, I remember when I first started watching the show for the first time ever, and she came on. She's probably one of the most fascinating characters, the most, I think, considering she was one of the first characters in this, one of the new characters that are introduced when they go on to 1795. And she had, being one of the first few characters in a long time, I think she had a lot going, it's difficult to put into words, but I think she had she really had to work to get to the place that she did, that she made it to, I guess. And she did a really good job. Some people have an awkward footing getting in the door when they start the show, and then they live on in their characters later on. But I think she really kind of nailed it from the word go. Like the minute she came on the show, she was just great. She was a really good addition to the show, and she really made this whole thing kind of work.
Angelique,
because
Angelique, Lara Parker.
Yeah, Lara Parker.
Mm-hmm.
I think her Angelique's character and Lara Parker,
great antagonist.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Probably one of the most brilliantly written witches in all of, I don't know, fiction. I can't think of one that's as fascinating as Angelique, because she's more than just, evil for being evil. She has like complex emotions and desires, and sometimes she has regret, sometimes she doesn't. You don't really know what's going to trigger it exactly. It just comes from a more like honest place, almost as if being a witch is a metaphor for just being a woman scorned for, in an unrequited love situation.
Jonathan was responsible for that, actually.
Yeah.
When she first came on, she didn't have that, and he said to her, "Now listen, this is," 'cause he liked her, and he said, "This is how you need to do this. You're the woman scorned," and this was during the audition. And when she heard that, she looked at the camera, and this is actually in the interview that we did of Lara. She likes to be called Laura. That's on there. That she looked into the camera as soon as she heard that, and she got the part. Was that she was able to do that, and she scared half the kids on the subway with that kind of look. She's
very beautiful yet very like terrifying. She has like those eyes that are just
her eyes are just piercing.
They're like cat eyes. Like she totally pulls it off. Or as David Selby says, he calls her moon eyes, or at least he does in an interview. I thought that was kind of funny. But she has like huge eyes that just kind of envelop you, and you totally believe that she can hypnotize someone just by looking at them. But her acting is phenomenal, and she really just does a good job, as soon as she enters, the show on the set of Collinwood. So
it's a strong block for a lot of them.
It really is. I also agree with Vicky as far as my least favorite character, which is Millicent. Also, I love Nancy Barrett, but she made me miss Carolyn. I missed Carolyn.
I miss Carolyn, too.
No, she was bad. No, she was bad. I mean, but you can't, again, Nancy Barrett, Millicent is a ditz.
Yeah, I guess so.
And a ditzy character, no matter who plays him, is going to come out negative.
Yeah.
Weak. And if anything, she's the weakest of the female characters in the block.
That's true. That's true. I didn't think about that.
She's kind of helpless, naive kind of thing. Nathan Forbes is a total jackwagon. Let's put it that way. He's a scoundrel.
Great tour de force for Joe.
Talk about someone who needs a slap.
Oh my God, he's the worst. He's like the pinnacle of what you hate in men. Sometimes, thank God y'all aren't like that, but they made him look like a total cad.
But remember Joe Haskell and the difference between Joe Haskell and his character?
Night and day.
That's a tribute to
I can
Joe
see why
Providence.
Alexandra Moltke was kind of pissed about not getting a role
part,
like everyone else, because she still had to play the same character while everyone else got to play.
I would have loved to have seen her do something else. Like
I know.
Or something.
Even if it was just to be possessed by Angelique and become a crazy witch for a season or something.
Alexandra Moltke wanted to play a vampire, and they wanted her back.
I think she would have been a great vampire.
Yeah, but they wanted her back in the cutesy poo role of Vicky.
Yeah.
I mean, Alexandra Moltke has really good acting chops. I kind of wish that she would have done even something else.
I agree.
If that was her last thing, because she does a really good job. I would have loved to see her take on a more serious role. So I can see why she would want to do that, because that would expand her acting ability.
And I want to say something to her credit also. I understand, and I found this out recently, that she actually at one point got on Facebook for a short period of time to make friends with the fans and interact with them. And unfortunately, some of the bad ones in the group started taunting her about the Alexandra Isles thing, the Von Bulow thing.
Yeah.
And they started running, and she got off there very, very quickly.
That's
and
a shame. People have to be so hateful.
Absolutely. And I don't blame her one bit for what she did. I don't blame her one bit. I mean, that was absolutely abominable. And those fans should be burning themselves in effigy over it. And I would tell them, as long as one at a time. But notwithstanding, there are a lot of Dark Shadows fans out there that are mature and that appreciated her contributions to the show. She was the linchpin then. She's also a central linchpin now in this arc. Because it's around her that everything else is revolving. She's the one link between that past and the present. And
yeah, I mean, she'll always be one of my favorite characters because, I mean, she's the reason the show started to begin with, and she's the character that Dan Curtis dreamed about. And if he hadn't had that dream, the show wouldn't even exist. Like, he got
that wild?
the idea
he
from
had a dream.
It is wild.
Yeah,
and he thought it was going to be a bad idea, but then I think it was his wife.
His kids, I think, convinced. Well, his wife.
Well, I think his wife at first because he told his wife the dream first, and then I think his kids also came into play, if I'm remembering it correctly. But I think he told his wife the dream first, and then she encouraged him to make it into like a show or something he was working on.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was something totally different for him because he was involved in CBS Golf.
I thought that was fascinating. I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah, but he was a fan of the 1940s horror movies. He was a big fan of that, and you can see he knew that genre extremely well because you could see the effort that he put into and the prior knowledge that he had, and that was a driving force behind Dark Shadows' Gothic horror success, although it started as a Gothic romance. But he realized sooner or later that it's got to change to give it a shot, and that's what worked.
I think I mean, Dark Shadows, I will always say this about the show. I really do think it was like a trailblazing pioneer show that really, all the TV shows that we have seen today, as far as like, the supernatural drama realm, I really think Dark Shadows kind of created that space for modern TV.
Yep.
So it's kind of incredible, actually.
It created for the Twilight Saga. It created for Buffy. It was a groundbreaker. It was a groundbreaker.
Absolutely.
That's why we're here.
My favorite character was Reverend Trask. I think
course.
He's fantastic. I just feel so much hate for him that it just exudes. Every time I see him, I just freaking hate him.
Because he's doing a good job.
And as his character goes on in this segment and future episodes coming up where he plays other characters, I mean, I hate him every single time, and I hate him so much that it's just like sort of thing. So I think that's the reason why I think he's fantastic. I just love to hate. When you got someone that you just love to hate, that means they're doing a bloody good job.
He's such a strong character too.
My least favorite is going to be Barnabas. I'm sorry, but Jonathan Frid, I think he's just a wet little blanket.
Unfortunately, it was disappointing. I agree with you.
He was. I agree.
And I think that I don't know. I kind of prefer the stronger evil Barnabas over the wet blanket Barnabas, because I think if he was a bit stronger, maybe I would understand why there's this fight between Josette and Angelique for his affection. I could understand why Josette was in love with him. I could understand, and the thing is, it could have been very easy, but I can't get over the face slap. I'm sorry.
But look,
just like,
I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch it.
I can't get over the face slap. I've seen Joan Crawford and Betty Davis get a face slap. I'm sorry, I just can't get over it.
But look, remember, this was the naive Papa's boy Barnabas, the guy who was brought up with a silver spoon into wealth. He was protected. He worked at the shipyards. He had his little flings. But he was extremely naive as to
technically this is on the coattails of the Revolutionary War, and
yeah, but at the same time, though, I think that you need to man him up a little bit.
He doesn't
have to be man's man, but unfortunately, if Barnabas was 19 or 20,
right,
fair enough. But basically, we got a 40-year-old man doing this, and
I don't know if they intended. I mean, Frid was 40 when he did that, but I think that they intended him to be like in his late 20s, early 30s, or something. But still, he was. But they did it, I think, for a reason, and the reason was to contrast that with the evil Barnabas that everybody knew about prior to him going to 1795.
Yeah, but I still think they could have done it. I think they could have done something better with him.
Well, watch what happens in the next couple of blocks as it becomes closer to what goes on. And then I think you see the real change, especially right after, and I don't want to get into too much, but right after he's turned. And you're going to see a real change from the naive little boy who does whatever his father says. Now it's going to be quite a different story.
I mean, to be honest, it would have been Kathleen E. Scott if she didn't have the whole Jeremiah death scene.
Yep. Yeah.
But, I love you, Catherine. Remember to write me. But anyway. But yeah, if it wasn't for that death scene where she actually gave so much gusto, I actually lifted it. Because if it wasn't for that death scene, Kathleen Scott would have been.
Well, it's also the writers. I mean, we can't forget that the writers are the ones that kind of dictate how the characters also act. It's not always just the actors too. So they probably have an idea also, but they're always whisking these things together really quickly, and it's kind of a miracle that things turn out as well as they do. And Dark Shadows is like.
Well, like, how many times have we talked to some of the Dark Shadows people, and they were just boom, 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 get to this set, get to that set. It was live.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I still think that, I do think that if you're an actor, and I think at this point, Barnabas has got quite a lot of stake in Dark Shadows a little bit, as far as like, and I think. Well, yeah, but I'm talking about he is the draw. He is what's bringing viewers to here. So I think that he could have had a little bit of ears.
I agree with you. He comes off a little namby-pamby, and that probably.
And I think you can make a change. I don't think you have to go to two extremes to show a change. I think that you can, I think you could show it. I think I said before, if he gave Jeremiah a punch in the face. That would have changed the whole spectrum.
If this were the vampire Barnabas, he would have taken them and thrown them across the wall. And I think that's the difference, because this was something, and I'm guessing, but I think what the writers wanted to imbue in the twisted. Now Barnabas grows up when he becomes a vampire, but he becomes twisted because he didn't have that. He didn't have the kind of upbringing where he could actually be his own man. Prior to the change. So
and I found another thing is that I think that maybe if he was more of a mama's boy, maybe if they had like a lot of scenes for him as like being a mama's boy to Naomi, maybe that would explain a little bit. There's just a lot of stuff that's not very much well explained. You kind of.
But he loved his mother. But he loved
his mom, but he didn't.
Yeah, he did.
It's a bit vague, wasn't it?
What?
I said, yeah, but I'm saying, like, if you had some, like, a lot of really good scenes where it's like, the mom, they're like, they show how really, really close they are.
It was more the father.
Maybe,
It was more the father. They really played off and they play off it later when we'll see it. They really play off Joshua versus, and the tortured Joshua, which you will see later, as he realizes what his son has become, and this is a real tour de force for Louis Edmonds. Some of his best moments in displaying the anguish that he felt and the decisions that he has to make now, and Barnabas's response to it. But at this point, yet Barnabas is still, unfortunately, a bit of a wimp.
So, Jesse, we get to the point where we discuss our overall views of this block. So what are your overall views of episodes 375 to 395?
Well, that's easy. This is like one of my favorite storylines in all of the Dark Shadows, because it really rounds things out. It adds new favorite characters, and you get to see more of Barnabas's background, and despite him being, a bit of a wet blanket, and some of the characterizations before he's turned, you do get to see, many different sides of him throughout this, storyline. So I do kind of appreciate all of that, and I do like how the crazy dramatic directions that this show goes into, especially in this block. It's just so crazy. And it's sometimes so over the top, like especially Grayson Hall, when she's taking the tarot cards, just like, I can't read them. I can't. And she's just like shuffling the cards and making sure like no one else can look at them, which is just
so emotional and dramatic. You can read her face like, Braille, I guess,
It's a bit crazy. It's a bit over the top and maybe unnecessary to react so strongly, because you're the only person pretending to read those cards, and I don't think she does it that well, but I always thought that was funny. But everyone does such a good job, and there's so much drama. It's high supernatural fun drama, and then Vicky rearranging the cards and Angelique being crazy, and Ben. I love that scene when even though Ben hates her, there's this kind of bonding scene between Angelique and Ben when she's taking the clay and molding it into something, and they're like, she turns it into a cat, and they both cackle like by the fireplace, and you can kind of see the fire against their faces, and his face is turning bright red while he's laughing. There's something like totally magical about the 1795 storyline and all the characters and how they interact with each other. Mm-hmm. It's really intense.
Well, if you think about it, who doesn't want to be able to travel back into time? And
Absolutely.
Doesn't. I know there's no proper hygiene and everything else. But I mean, you could spend a day there and check shit out.
Well, if you smell that bad, just put on some rosewater cologne and you'll be good.
Yeah, rosewater fixes
everything. I'm too anal retentive to the back then. Sorry. When I go to the bathroom, I'm not going to an outhouse. I want a warm booty. Vicky, what are your thoughts?
I gotta kind of agree with Jesse. This is like, the part of Dark Shadows that really captures everybody's imaginations, even though we loved all the prior black and whites or whatever before that. But this is the one that catches everybody's, the fantasy aspect of it. Let's face it, you got a bunch of ladies at home back in the day that were watching this. And, it touches off on the romanticism, that probably inhabits everybody's mind just a little bit. And, you get to see Angelique come into her full, witchery, and, all the characters are evolving into this time hop, and you see the other side of them evolve as well. Like you're saying, Nathan Forbes, and you got Joe, and they're both the same person playing it, but they're polarized opposites, in different times. But I really enjoyed this a lot, and I have to agree. I wish Barnabas, I just went back. I had to look at it on YouTube really quick because it was driving me nuts. He could have put more oomph into the slap. Okay, I get you.
That's true.
He could have put more oomph into it, but I mean, I love seeing how the characters are doing this new spin in the 1700s. It's kind of fascinating and brilliant for its day, because I don't even think any soap operas ever tried this. They do
anything new. No,
but that's about it. So it for its time, it totally ahead. Totally, I love this block.
And what about yourself, Tom?
Absolutely. I think that this does, once again, it pushes forward, which was a great start. And then when you kind of think of the relationships, like Millicent and Nathan are starting now to develop this little relationship with each other. Nathan, of course, is totally intrigued with Millicent's money, couldn't care less about her, and Millicent is even, she makes Barnabas seem like a worldly person. But when you consider Millicent, Nathan versus Carolyn and Joe, where they originally were going out with each other, they want to establish a kind of a bond between the present day. They want you to have a relationship. They want you to see in your mind that, well, these were how the characters were in the present. Now look at the same actors playing these different characters. But Vicky and Jeremiah initially had that attraction to each other, and that's the Burke and Vicky thing. Let's see, what else? Josette and Andre, father-daughter, Sam Evans and Maggie Evans. So
that's true. Yeah.
So there's something the writers want you to get a sense. I think it was brilliant. The writers want you to get a sense so that you can develop a parallel, a connection in your mind between the characters and even the relationships of the characters. And they're similar to some of the relationships that the characters have in the past.
It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz in that way, because, when Dorothy goes to Oz, all the characters that were in her Kansas Grey World were in there. They all played. Oh, you and you were there. Victoria could go back and do the same thing. She would be a little bit more terrified, though.
Yeah.
And the scene in the woods where Angelique is burning the tree. It reminds me of this scene where Dorothy and the Scarecrow are walking on the yellow brick road, and then you see the witch go behind a tree after she, like, I don't know, make
the
trees come to life.
Good. And then who knows? Well, they stole from everything. I wouldn't be surprised if they steal from that as well. But so the bottom line is that this does good plot devices. Sam Hole was a good writer. In general, Gordon Russell backed them up. You got some great dialogue between the characters. The introduction of Jerry Lacey as Trask was that, in my mind, brings this block to the fore. It is the strongest one, backed up by Clarice Blackburn as Abigail, and of course Laura Parker is always there, the timeless evil witch who's influencing everything, looking to make everything bad, and
misunderstood witch, misunderstood.
Yeah, and she'll always be misunderstood, except there's a point later on. But anyway, so what makes it work? So that makes it work for me. And the only thing, as I said, I do agree that. But this, you'll see the kinks in this particular block, I think, are worked out in later blocks.
And for me, I have to say this: the first block that we've done since starting this that I actually binge watched and watched it in 2 days and really enjoyed it without falling asleep. So because I said everything was very, very strong. Even like the things that I pointed out that I kind of wish were slightly better weren't to the point where it's like, but the storyline just moved very, very well. It moved quick. There was no slow moments. There wasn't like, oh, come on, get on with this, that we tend to get with Dark Shadows. And and I have to say this is probably one of the strongest blocks. And normally what I do is I kind of watch 5 or 6 episodes a week, and then unless we do, when we used to do 2 episodes of Dark Shadows a month, then I would have to actually double that. But normally what I do is I do 5 episodes per week, so that way it's fine. I can have a cup of tea, and then I can get on with my day, which is fine. I can go on to do other stuff. And though I do enjoy Dark Shadows, sometimes, I have to have a little bit of patience with it. Where this is just like, I had to stop myself at 395. And not watch over that, because what I try to do is watch what we're just covering, so that way it's fresh in my mind and I don't go over.
Yep.
And I had to there say that when I got to 395, I was really disappointed. I was like, oh damn! I got to the end and I got like a whole month before we cover this, where I can do other stuff.
I know I did that too.
And I said there, and this was a really strong block. Everyone was excellent. Last month we had a problem finding the least favorite character, not actor, but least favorite character. And this month again, we're having difficulty finding a least favorite character. Where before we could name, we had so many that basically we had difficulty deciding who was the worst. And so it tells you how great this block is, that we're actually fighting over, and we're basically picking our least favorite character by basically finding like a flaw that really doesn't matter to find out.
Exactly.
So that tells you how strong this is. So,
Absolutely.
And I'm looking forward to 396 to, oh God, where are we going to? 4 something. We're going to the 400 episodes. Yay!
Probably 416 or something.
416.
Something like that. I am looking forward to it too.
Well, that brings us to the end of the Literary Podcast on discussion of Dark Shadows, episodes 375 to 395. Make sure you do sign up to our newsletter, where it is at www.llpodcast.com. Next month, our T-shirt will be ready, and you'll love our T-shirt with some great surprises. Our T-shirt will feature Angelique and Reverend Trask, along with Dora and Aunt Clara on our T-shirt, and We'll have that prototype out for you next month, and the T-shirts will be available at the end of October. Next month, we'll be covering our books of screen, which will be Treasure Island with Robert Louis Stevenson, and we'll be also covering the 1950s film starring Bobby Driscoll, who died an untimely and horrible death, which we'll probably get into as well when we cover Treasure Island. And that's pretty much it. So it's good night for myself, and good night, Tom.
Good night, and everybody stay safe.
Good night, Vicky.
Good night, everybody.
And good night, Jesse.
Good night, all.
And we'll see you next week for Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson and the 1950 Disney film of the same name.
Been a Literary License Podcast production. Till next time, and don't forget to comment or share. We so admirably appreciate your support. Now it's back to Mr. Barnabas, Mr. Joshua, and all the goings on at Collinwood. And remember the witch!